Imagine waking up inside a fantasy novel as a nameless extra so irrelevant that the system doesn't even recognize your face, leaving you as a literal question mark in the crowd with nothing but a magical laptop to rewrite the world's rules, where every other cadet is a natural-born genius, while you're stuck using the weakest weapon in history, a simple gun that you somehow use to freeze magical projectiles in midair and blast through deadly threats. Standing on a cliffside like some legendary hero, while the strongest people in the world look up at you in absolute awe, even though behind the scenes you're clutching your arm in agonizing pain, burning your own soul just to survive the very story you wrote yourself. Because here's the thing. Mysterious co-author has hijacked your plot, forcing you to hide in the bushes as a wolf-like marksman, waiting for the perfect shot before you're forced to raise your hands and play the harmless coward, while hot-tempered heroines punch holes in the wall right next to your head. But when the act falls apart, and you have to show them what a real author can do, you'll light up the dark with a massive, world-shaking blast from a gun that shouldn't even exist. But to understand how this faceless extra turned into the deadliest phantom in the shadows, we have to go back to the beginning. He aims a heavy Desert Eagle handgun directly forward, his gaze freezing into a cold, focused glare. He is trapped inside a story, but before we get to his misery, we have to look at the hooded figure who brought him here to meet the novel's main character, Kim Suho. The whole story begins with a glowing open book, representing a world where a dark tower erupts into existence, and terrifying monsters attack panicked humans. A map of the world shows hotspots of monster activity across Korea, where monstrous beasts leave the population weeping and helpless in the ruins. But out of the darkness, a brilliant golden light is born, as giant claws tear through the sky, and then fade, leaving survivors to embrace each other in relief. A glowing, gloved hand reaches down to offer help, sparking a wave of new heroes who clear dungeons and turn a massive cataclysm into an economic opportunity that sends financial charts soaring. Train these protectors, a prestigious academy called Cube gathers the world's elite, including our righteous main character who swings his sword to release bursts of energy. Every swing is a display of perfect, heroic form, but every great protagonist needs a rival to push him, and that role belongs to a silver-haired spearman named Shin Jong-hak. Still, it is Kim Suho who takes first place on the arena podium, wearing a bright smile, while our gun-toting author looks down from the sidelines, stressed and dejected. He stares at the holographic leaderboard and asks himself flat out, how did this even happen? He is surrounded by a cheering crowd that can only focus on the stars. Even the Academy's female instructor looks on from the balcony with deep admiration, completely mesmerized by the young cadet standing in perfect formal stance. Hajin can only stare at the back of the golden boy, the heroic sword-wielder destined to save this chaotic world, who carries a righteous heart that conceals a massive secret. But our former writer has far bigger problems to worry about, starting with his position on the sidelines and the arrogant presence of Shin Jong-hak, the wealthy heir of the world's largest corporation, whose toxic inferiority complex will eventually turn him into an absolute villain as he clashes weapons against the shining light of our main hero. The two main characters stand together on the podium like stars, but when a classmate taps our laptop-toting cadet on the shoulder, he rounds on him and asks, "Did you sleep late last night?" Hajin freezes in absolute shock, but the boy cuts him off and snaps, "Who else is named Kim Chundong here?" Points excitedly toward the giant stadium screens, which look over the massive circular arena, where our wolf-like marksman groans in absolute despair, realizing, "My face is a question mark." He sits on the stadium bench, holding his head in his hands, because a stylized diagram shows the main characters glowing with brilliant stars, while he is just a tiny blue stick figure meant to fill the empty seats, sitting completely alone with a face he cannot even see. Meanwhile, a mysterious masked figure in a black suit adjusts his hat, while a tiny horned chibai sits alone, waiting for the chaos to begin. He's back in the real world for a brief moment, remembering how he received a digital envelope on his screen and muttered, "What's this?" It was a notification about his paused story, making him stare at the computer screen and wonder why someone would send a remake offer. Because of the guilt of abandoning his work, he replied, but he never could have guessed that a simple email would pull him from his life and drop him right into this world, which begins with a wide view of the Cube Academy dormitory complex at night. He stares into the bathroom mirror, finally getting used to his face after 2 weeks of confusion. It has been 2 full weeks of lying in bed and reflecting on his strange fate, knowing he is stuck in the body of Kim Chundong, a completely useless extra in his own novel. He has tried every method under the sun to find a way out, but with no answers in sight, he realizes he might have to stay in this chaotic world for a very long time. If he has to survive until the point where he stopped writing, it will take a grueling 10 years of his life, leaving him standing at the bathroom sink in complete, overwhelming defeat. The thought of being trapped with a bunch of superpowered teenagers for a decade makes him look at his laptop in sheer frustration, feeling absolutely miserable as he leans over his desk. He stares into the mirror, realizing his only escape is to follow the main story, which means he must read the pages of his novel and stare at his reflection until he is ready to face the world. He leaves his room to face the massive Cube Academy, where a seagull flies over the campus, which houses 50,000 cadets and support staff within its high-tech buildings. This hyper-advanced metropolis is the heart of the nation's power, and our stranded author stands alone in the corridor, knowing it is also the main stage of his story. He walks past the grand entrance of the Hero Training Center, joining a crowd of eager students who are preparing to unlock special supernatural abilities called gifts. But our extra-turned hero knows the original owner of this body had no outstanding talent, and as he walks down the hall, he wonders if he has anything special at all. He can only hope for a decent skill to keep him alive as he stands before the ornate wooden doors of the auditorium, and then steps inside the brightly lit, high-tech classroom. Round him, a bored cadet sits yawning, while the arrogant Shin Jong-hak stares forward with intense golden eyes, and the shining protagonist, Kim Suho, smiles brightly at his classmates. It is a world where cadets are already starting to form cliques, and after a long, exhausting day, the sun sets over the dormitories, as Kim Hajin slowly climbs the stairs, wondering how he ever managed to survive high school. But as he reaches the top step, a heavy package thumps onto his desk, and a mysterious glowing interface with a question mark appears in front of him. He runs to his desk, looking at his laptop in absolute surprise, as a bright digital warning flashes to initialize synchronization. A laptop-toting cadet stares in sheer shock, muttering, "This is..." He stares at the glowing interface, gasping, "The settings that I wrote, just who would?" But before he can finish the thought, a brilliant light erupts from the screen, casting a massive silhouette through cracked, distorted glass, as Kim Hajin opens his eyes to the realization that his survival has just begun. Meanwhile, a simple drawing of a muscular cat rests on a ledge, reminding us of the weirdness to come. While Kim Hajin dreams of the lethal shooter he is destined to become, a determined gaze shapes his features, even as a mysterious presence lingers in his shadow, guiding his hand toward a glowing digital screen that announces the official start of his remade life. He reaches out to swipe the glowing interface, gasping in shock as the reality of his situation sinks in, finding himself completely surrounded by flickering status windows that have suddenly manifested in his private quarters. This world calls the phenomenon enlightenment, a sudden breakthrough that digitizes a hero's inner talent so they can raise their combat stats with perfect mathematical efficiency. Our former writer studies the system carefully, noting that while his physical vessel is currently weaker than a standard cadet, he possesses a unique pool of points that can reshape his destiny. He discovers a bizarre mechanic that rewards him with story points as his presence grows more important, which sparks a sudden realization, remembering how people scramble through the ashes like rabbits trying to outrun a forest fire, which makes our laptop-toting cadet mutter, "What kind of bullshit is this?" System demands that he intervene in the plot to survive, leaving him hunched over his computer to search for a loophole, knowing that there are no guarantees if the story runs completely off the rails. Comparing his pathetic stats to the monstrous potential of the main hero, Kim Suho, he decides to dump his entire fortune into luck, hoping that converting his raw points into story points will bypass the normal limits of human growth. The gamble pays off brilliantly as his luck stat skyrockets to absurd levels, but his smug satisfaction is instantly shattered by a flashing error message, prompting him to sigh. "I knew it was too good to be true." Still, he managed to boost his perseverance, and since he retains a massive buffer of 10,000 bonus points, our wolf-like marksman rests a bit easier before the reality of his academic life begins. The next morning brings him face to face with Kim Soo-hyuk, the formidable class instructor whose legendary world ranking of under 10,000 commands immediate respect from the entire freshman class. The veteran hunter wastes no time with pleasantries, warning them that they will be judged with ruthless scrutiny before activating a digital interface that catches the students completely off guard. A massive arsenal of weapons reveals itself, and the instructor barks, "Hurry and choose a weapon that you'll use," ordering them to stand up and follow him to the training grounds. Kim Suho immediately claims a magnificent sword, while the other prodigies gather to inspect the weapons, and the hot-tempered Ki Naeun draws a massive bow, both choosing their signature tools of destruction without a single hint of hesitation. Kim Hajin wanders past the weapons, knowing he must make a careful decision as he walks past the spears and the massive defensive shields, aiming to select a weapon he can adapt to quickly from his previous life. He reaches into the display case, sparking instant muttering among his classmates who whisper, "What? Is he for real?" as they stare in complete disbelief at the Black Desert Eagle handgun he holds. CH-003P033 completely oblivious to the shadowy figure observing his progress from the dark. He stands surrounded by murmuring classmates, holding his newly acquired handgun, as instructor Kim Soo-hyuk looks down at his digital tablet and notes that he used to train with a sword. Hajin quietly fires back that he decided to switch, prompting the instructor to shrug and remind him that Cube allows its students complete freedom, though he warns sternly that the cadet must take absolute responsibility for their choices. As the instructor walks away, our newly minted marksman stands perfectly still under the mocking glares of his classmates, who whisper that he has completely lost his mind. Wondering if he is just a pathetic attention seeker they should thrash during combat training. But our former writer knows that firearms are heavily underrated in this fantasy world, especially since standard weapons fire magic bullets infused with devastating mana, though most people ignore them because of a fundamental flaw where any decent warrior can easily deflect a projectile with a single sword strike. Its gun damage remains completely fixed regardless of the user's personal strength. And because this world relies on the mystical power of ancient legends, most fighters prefer old prehistoric weapons that grow stronger alongside their wielders, trusting the glowing edge of a legendary blade over modern technology. The elite cadets rely on these ancient armaments to shatter their limits, but that has nothing to do with Hajin, who looks on with a slightly nervous expression as he carries his weapon case down the hallway, fully aware that he cannot swing a sword to save his life. Turns around with a resolute gaze, realizing that choosing a gun allows him to stand out immediately and farm precious story points, especially if he can unlock a unique gift to bypass the limitations of his weapon. While average people only receive one gift in their entire lives, exceptions exist, which is why the protagonist Kim Suho walks into the training center looking slightly confused, only to find the hot-tempered Ki Naeun looking back at him with pure annoyance. He stands resting her bow as she grumbles about the pathetic quality of the academy's other sharpshooters, rounding on Suho when he questions her irritated expression. She snaps that she cannot stand weaklings who call themselves marksmen, but can barely shoot a target a kilometer away, muttering that Hajin has clearly given up on becoming a real hero and is just stalling. Suho gently warns her not to judge people so rashly, offering a calm smile that only infuriates her further, until she shouts that she does not want to hear his endless nagging. Back in his dorm, our laptop-toting cadet shivers as if someone is talking behind his back, before focusing on his computer screen to review the incredible power of unique gifts. Determined not to waste his massive pool of story points, he opens a glowing blue creation menu to draft a brand new ability, which instantly consumes his entire reserve of 10,000 points to materialize. The laptop screen flickers as it automatically edits his draft into a master marksman gift, surrounding him with the spectral outlines of legendary bows and guns. Though his stats are still low, he knows he can slowly level them up over time, tapping a final key before stretching his arms with a look of absolute readiness. He stares forward with an intense gaze, fully resolved to survive using this newly acquired power. Few days later, the scene shifts to the academy courtyard under a bright afternoon sun, where instructor Suhyuk lectures the class about the strategic layout of high-ranking dungeons, while Hajin quietly takes notes on his tablet. He activates his observation gift to scan the room, reading the status window of the protagonist sitting nearby, while his laptop seamlessly synchronizes with the world's chronological timeline. The instructor cuts through his thoughts to announce an upcoming written exam, prompting a frustrated cadet to shout that they should be practicing real combat instead of studying textbooks, though Suhyuk ignores the outburst and orders the entire Veritas class to gather at the plaza. Our extra-turned hero lets out a heavy sigh as he leans his head on his hand, before joining his classmates in the massive courtyard to hear the official team assignments. The screen displays a balanced team structure consisting of 2 frontline warriors, a sharpshooter, and a support, as the elegant British Princess Rachel Louise watches the board while the instructor explains the ranking balance, before raising his hand to dismiss the crowd to find their new teammates. Hajin stares at the holographic projection of his assigned squad in absolute disbelief, his face freezing in pure shock as he realizes he has been grouped with the story's absolute elites. Staring down the barrel of his training pistol, our gun-loving author knows that in a world where magic and giant swords rule, a common firearm is basically considered a toy. But he is determined to turn his useless weapon into an absolute nightmare for his enemies. Path to Survival begins with the team placement exam, where a digital screen lists him alongside Yu Yonha, the cold, calculation-minded heiress who is destined to lead Korea's most powerful guild. And while she is already a famous prodigy within the academy, our wolfish extra realizes that securing her connection is his best ticket to safety. So he marches down the corridor with a quiet vow to grab her attention by showing off some serious skill during their joint training. But when he actually arrives at the training grounds, the wealthy heiress is currently greeting her other teammates, a loud, energetic axe-wielder named Jin Hosung and a sharp-eyed girl named Heizuki, politely exchanging formal pleasantries that mask her natural distance. Her expression quickly sours when she looks around for their final member, only to see our black-suited writer strolling up with a relaxed stride as he tries to project the absolute confidence that the demanding young lady respects. His cool facade is immediately punctured when Hosung points at him and asks, "You're the kid that chose a gun for a weapon, right?" And before Hajin can even answer, a terrifyingly stern instructor looms over them, asking if they are free enough to be chit-chattering. The group jumps in fright as they find themselves under his intense glare, while the teacher barks orders to check their smartwatches, which flash with the coordinate data of their target monster. A moment later, they are sprinting through fields of waist-high grass, following the blue holographic route on their wrists as Heizuki warns everyone to prepare for a rough fight. While the others glide across the terrain like professional athletes, our gasping sharpshooter is falling behind, wondering how his supposedly average stamina stats can leave him feeling like he is running through thick molasses. He watches Hosung leap forward with a heavy battle axe bouncing on his back, while Heizuki cuts through the wind like a silent arrow, abruptly halting the group at the edge of a rocky cliff. Peering over the ocean, they scan the turbulent waters, which suddenly erupt as a massive black hump octopus lunges into the air. Back on the sandy shore, Heizuki calls a quick huddle around a holographic display to analyze the beast's deadly abilities, explaining that the creature's dangerous head humps house dozens of blood-sucking babies, which it will aggressively spray onto its targets to drain their life. She suggests that their resident marksman should focus on shooting down the small fry, to which Hajin flatly interjects, "No, I'll handle the baby octopuses," before anyone else can doubt him. Heizuki tells the main attackers to hold their magic in reserve for a single lethal strike, leaving Hajin momentarily wondering if his teammate is just trying to sideline his weak weapon. But as she turns to ask if everyone is ready to begin, the young author merely nods and prepares his weapon. The massive beast immediately slams its tentacles against the wet rocks with a deafening roar, shattering the landscape in a display of raw physical power. Stepping onto the unstable shoreline, Hosung prepares to make his move, under the watchful glare of the monster's glowing yellow eye. He drives his heavy axe into the earth to anchor himself, knowing his main job is to pull the beast's attention. But as those giant eyes lock onto him, the sea rises up in a violent crest, and the multi-tentacled nightmare bursts from the foam. The terrified vanguard lets out an undignified shriek as a massive limb comes crashing down, diving out of the way like a startled rabbit, while Hajin watches from a distance, gritting his teeth as he takes aim with his desert eagle. Suddenly, Heizuki rushes into the fray with her blade glowing with magical energy, striking a dramatic, theatrical pose as she unleashes a flashy, bright pink aura, dropping to her knees as if performing a stage show in the middle of a literal war zone. While the main group is busy, a horde of strange purple creatures begins to crawl out from the shadows, chasing down a terrified cadet who runs for his life as the explosive monsters multiply, leaping through the air like a swarm of ravenous insects that forces him to sprint even faster, grunting under the sheer weight of his panic. Before the beasts can overwhelm him, a sharp white flash cuts through the dim atmosphere, as Yu Yonha slashes through the pack with effortless grace, leaving the purple monsters to dissolve into harmless mist. He spins her blade into a defensive stance, standing tall and confident as the savior of the moment, while the rescued cadet stares in awe at the Academy's 7th-ranked genius. Her cold eyes remain entirely unfazed, barely acknowledging the boy as he rushes forward to thank her. But she is immediately forced to swing her blade again as another beast attacks, revealing a giant, glowing yellow eye that locks onto her. He quickly jumps back as a massive, multi-tentacled nightmare lunges from the dark, dodging through the air with a desperate leap to avoid its crushing weight. Powerful shockwave ripples across the clearing as the beast slams down, prompting a nearby green-haired cadet to scream, "You Yonha SSI, watch out!" The young heiress whips her head around to face the impending strike, only to freeze in shock as a sudden bullet rips right through the monster's flesh. A brass casing clinks against the ground, revealing our low-ranked extra kneeling in the distance, staring down his sights as he fires another precise shot, leaving Yonha to gasp out his name, Kim Hajin, in utter disbelief. While she stares, our exhausted marksman is calculating his stats, knowing that earning story points requires him to make himself important, and since he is currently a nobody, his only option is to directly intervene in the main protagonist's battles. He steadily aims his black handgun at the writhing beast, as the green-haired girl looks on with wide, bewildered eyes. Yonha yells for him to stay back and get out of the combat zone, but her words are cut short by a blinding explosion of magical energy, which completely shreds the creature's massive tentacles. She grips her weapon in stunned silence, while our laptop-wielding cadet crouches low, counting down the remaining targets. He knows his physical limits will only let him make a difference in this exact split second, so he activates his unique gift, slowing down time to a literal crawl. Standing frozen amidst the suspended magic particles in the air, he unleashes a rapid torrent of bullets into the helpless monsters, watching the digital timer count down his precious 3 seconds as his rounds sink deep into their purple hides, and several empty brass casings hover lazily in the air. His finger pulls the trigger one final time, releasing a terminal shot that flashes with a brilliant blue light from his focused eye, right as the countdown hits 0 and a massive energy shockwave erupts. The blue beams of energy instantly punch through the winged creatures, allowing a blue-haired classmate to whip her wire weapon through the air, while the main multi-eyed beast roars in absolute agony. Sharp purple slash cuts across its giant body, leaving it completely disoriented, as 2 more cadets leap high into the sky, and Hosung swings his massive axe with a shout of magic liberation. The green-haired girl joins the final assault with her sword raised, her face tight with determination as they finish off the beast. With the threat cleared, our sweat-drenched author collapses flat on his back, looking like a cartoon pig staring helplessly at the sky after completely draining his fragile body. Gun-toting author Kim Hajin is locking in, staring straight down the barrel of his handgun with a cold, absolute focus. But while he calculates his next move in this dangerous rewrite, the spotlight remains firmly fixed on Kim Suho, the original hero of this world. Not everyone is celebrating the exam's aftermath, though as our hot-tempered heiress, Ki Nayeon, nurses a bruised face and an even more bruised ego. He grumbles about how she could possibly score lower than her rivals, while Shin Jong-hak sits in brooding silence, realizing the gap between their prestigious families is slipping, which only fuels the ponytail brawler's mounting frustration until she slams her fist onto her desk in a quiet rage. Sensing an opportunity to gloat, our sharp-eyed socialite, Yu Yonha, glides past the fuming girl, leaning in close with a perfectly calculated, sweet-poisoned smile, and gently rests a hand on her classmate's tense shoulder. They exchange pleasantries about the exam, where Yonha casually drops that her team landed a stellar 4th place, sending Nayeon into a comical mental breakdown over her own disastrous 16th place finish. Yonha's focus immediately shifts to the absurd rumor that a gunman also ranked 16th, questioning, "It would have been lucky if that didn't slow you down," unaware that Hajin is scratching his head nearby, wondering, "Is someone talking about me?" Yonha cannot stop thinking about how those dozens of flying baby octopi were completely vaporized, her suspicious gaze turning sharp as she tries to make the impossible math add up. Meanwhile, our wolf-like marksman is completely drained, sprawling out on the floor of the training room to check his laptop screen and wonder, "I wonder how much I've RANKED up." By training relentlessly and using his Desert Eagle, his precious story points have climbed, showing a welcome system alert that his physical stats are slowly but surely creeping upward. He takes a long, exhausted gulp of water, satisfied with the steady progress, while across campus, Yonha sits up late in her dark room, staring at her screen to analyze the video feed of Hajin's rapid-fire performance. Her fingers clatter against the keyboard as she dissects the exact timestamps, realizing that in under 3 seconds, he fired an impossible 60 bullets with a basic handgun. She mimics a firing stance with her fingers, questioning how any human finger could pull a physical trigger 20 times in a single second. He runs through the simulation with a speed that defies his frail physical conditioning, making her wonder why there is absolutely no record of this phantom shooter at the military academy. She rests her chin on her hand, completely engrossed in the mystery of the low-ranked gunslinger, which irritates Shin Jong-hak as he reviews the combat logs in his own training room, scoffing at the idea that Yonha's weak team could possibly hide any actual talent. But Yonha only curls up in her chair with a knowing smile, finding his predictable curiosity rather endearing. The ripples of the exam reach even higher, as guild leader Yoon Seung-ah calls her assistant over to a screen to analyze his combat stats while asking, "Kim Suho really amazing." The boy moves with the fluid grace of running water, his face locked in serene focus as if his lethal swordsmanship is a beautifully choreographed dance, possessing a cutting force that seems to rip through space itself. It is no wonder every top-tier guild in the country is already fighting tooth and nail to draft him. But as the assistant prepares to swipe to the next cadet, Seung-ah's eyes widen as she spots a peculiar detail, asking her assistant in absolute shock, "This cadet uses a gun." Her assistant confirms that this unorthodox gunman has briefly set the online community ablaze due to his proximity to Yu Yonha. They play the footage, showing Hajin landing 59 out of 60 high-speed shots, an incredible feat considering the physics of the recoil should have shattered his wrists. Surrounded by a holographic array of firearm models, our laptop-toting cadet is a complete anomaly, especially since he swapped his sword for a pistol the second he arrived at Cube, a massive gamble that normally sets a warrior's career back by years unless they have experienced a rare, sudden enlightenment. Seung-ah finds the teenage marksman intriguing, yet remains skeptical of a hero whose potential is capped by mere bullets, deciding they should keep an eye on him anyway, despite their scouting schedule being completely packed. The world is starting to watch, waiting to see if this strange extra will rise or crumble under the pressure, while Hajin himself remains blissfully asleep, wrapped warm in his blankets, completely unaware of the waves he has just made. Training day at Cube is brutal as Kim Suho executes a flawless heavy sword strike, while other cadets trade heavy blows in high-stakes sparring matches, clashing training weapons across the massive anti-personnel arena. The towering instructor, Kim Soo-hyuk, watches every single movement with a hawk's eye, while the elegant English princess, Rachel Louise, keeps her rapier poised and ready. But our lazy sharpshooter is having a miserable training day, his eyes widening as the screen displays 934 th place/KIM HAJIN, as Soo-hyuk looms over him like a thunderstorm, shouting, "Get up immediately." The stern teacher explains that because training guns are still in development, practicing with live weapons carries a real blood-spilling risk. Soo-hyuk offers to duel him personally, forcing our wolf-like marksman to desperately scream for surrender, only to be told that the real world has no surrender button. The instructor tightens his leather-gloved fist, commanding the kid with the scary eyes, "Get your guard up," and unleashes a sudden, wind-splitting punch that the boy barely manages to slide under. Hajin's eyes widen in sheer panic as he realizes the next attack is already coming, a heavy fist hurtling toward his face like an oncoming freight train, yet he somehow twists his body at an impossible angle to dodge the strike. Soo-hyuk notes that the boy's actual combat stance is completely amateurish, but his eyes carry a frightening, laser-focused intensity. This is all thanks to his clairvoyant skill, which maps out the environment and projects glowing, predictive lines of his opponent's movement path. Even with the cheat-like predictions, Hajin still has to physically move his sluggish, unoptimized body to avoid getting crushed. His clumsy, desperate evasions draw immediate sneers from the gossiping cadets watching from the sidelines. After class, a cold, refreshing can of soda drops into the vending machine, and our gun-toting author reaches down to grab it, hoping to soothe his parched throat. He stands there completely exhausted, clutching his cold drink, when our competitive archer, Ki Naeun, silently walks past him in the quiet corridor. They share a long, heavy silence as they lock eyes, leaving Hajin to sigh about how prickly her actual personality is compared to what he wrote. He looks back at the machine, wondering if he can run a small experiment to earn some easy story points, and offers her a fresh soda, which she instantly takes as a physical provocation. Tries to explain it's just a simple token of friendly peace, his mind spinning as he calculates exactly how much SB he can harvest from a single conversation with a major protagonist. Naeun closes her eyes, telling him she doesn't need his pity, before aggressively snatching the soda can right out of his hand and points aggressively at him as she retreats, snapping, "This is your first warning." He watches her storm off, completely unfazed by her hostility, and notices a subtle shift in the weight of her heavy duffel bag. She rummages through her belongings as she walks, leaving Hajin to lean against the balcony railing, realizing his casual bribery didn't pay out. He knows she secretly loves commoner food like ramen, burgers, and Coke, but refuses to buy them to protect her noble family's reputation. Sitting in front of his laptop, he realizes that exploiting minor character secrets only yields a handful of points. To earn the massive points he needs to survive, he must directly intervene in a major plot event, specifically the upcoming demonic human ambush at the National Weapons Museum. Demonic humans are desperate people who sell their souls to actual demons in exchange for overwhelming power, and one is currently hiding in the museum to assassinate a vital target. In his original draft, Kim Suho defeats the threat and earns the respect of key allies, with Naeun also playing a major part in this dangerous encounter. Our laptop-toting cadet resolves to squeeze his way into this museum group, but a patrolling staff member catches him in the dark corridor, shouting, "What are you doing outside the DORMS?" Hajin quickly slams his laptop shut, apologizing profusely as he scrambles back to his dorm before he gets a penalty. Our laptop-toting cadet accesses the academy interface to find a club, which is a perfect place to develop hobbies and interact with other students. But he has a very specific destination in mind as he looks up at the massive cube gate portal. The president of the Healing Rain Travel Club, Oh Han-hyun, greets the new recruits, noting that this year's applicants include some incredibly famous names, though some of them look completely bored. Han-hyun starts sweating and hyperventilating in sheer excitement, before calming down to explain that their main goal is simple relaxation. They will use the portal to travel outside the academy, and our sleepy-eyed author listens quietly as Han-hyun dramatically announces their first destination is Seoul. Our gun-loving author realizes this trip is playing out exactly like his novel, especially when they draw lots from a box to form pairs, which lands him in a group with a deeply annoyed Ki Naeun who snaps, "Why don't we move separately?" She glares with an angry tick on her cheek, giving him a harsh second warning to never speak to her casually. Our wolf-eyed cadet remains unfazed as they arrive at the massive weapons museum, stepping inside the crowded, high-tech exhibition hall. He wanders through the exhibits alone, spotting Naeun looking at a weapon display in the distance, which means the story's main event is about to begin. Sure enough, he finds Kim Suho standing nearby, staring intently at a replica showcase. This is the legendary protagonist of his novel, and our rookie rifleman walks up to ask if he's admiring the seven-branch sword. Suho smiles warmly and apologizes for his distraction, remembering him as the eccentric cadet who chose a handgun. Hajin looks at him and silently curses this righteous, handsome son of a bitch for being so unrealistically perfect. But their conversation is cut short as the museum ceiling suddenly fractures. The crowd looks up in sheer alarm, just as a red system alert flashes on the screens, warning everyone that dangerous monsters have appeared outside. The emergency broadcast blares through the speakers, triggering a massive, chaotic panic as terrified visitors scramble wildly for the exits. Footsteps stampede across the marble floors, with people pushing and shoving each other out of the way. Small child trips and falls directly into the path of the stampede, but our wolf-eyed cadet smashes through a glass display case to the utter shock of the onlookers and scoops the little girl up into his arms. Ki Naeun runs up and shouts that the reserve hero is on his way, warning them that running outside right now is suicide. She watches the chaotic hallway, which slowly grows eerily quiet, and tells Hajin to quickly grab a weapon to stand guard. Suddenly, her eyes go wide with terror as a sharp weapon is unsheathed nearby. She raises her bow to protect the civilians as a tall, dark figure steps into view. Heavy, deliberate footsteps approach them, revealing a red-haired villain with glowing yellow eyes. Hajin instantly recognizes him as a deadly antagonist from Lucius, who extends a sharp, claw-like hand to slash Ki Naeun where she stands. But before he can strike, Kim Suho leaps into the fray, his sword glowing with blue energy as he attacks from above. Hajin watches calmly, confident that the protagonist will easily win, completely unaware of the masked boss standing in the shadows. But as our former writer watches the clash, he realizes that something is terribly wrong, because the plot he wrote is completely deviating from his original script. Instead of dominating his opponent, the legendary protagonist lies flat on his back, prompting our desperate author to rush to his side to check if he can still fight. Unfortunately, their monstrous opponent steps forward draped in a suffocating dark energy, moving directly toward Ki Naeun. She immediately fires a volley of arrows in self-defense, but the grinning fiend doesn't even bother to dodge, letting the projectiles hit his body with zero effect. He clutches her bowstring in absolute frustration, watching in horror as the beast effortlessly deflects her attacks with his dark aura. Hajin screams at her to dodge the incoming strike, but Naeun stands frozen with a panicked expression while trying to fire back, as a surge of dark energy strikes Suho down, enveloping his sword and taking the form of a shadowy, glowing-eyed beast. The opponent smiles menacingly with sharp, jagged teeth, his body shifting into an even more grotesque form that leaves the wounded protagonist completely shocked. Shadowy claws rip through the air, forcing Suho to desperately parry before he is violently pinned to the ground, helplessly trapped with black arrows in his back. Naeun struggles to aim another shot, as the beast looms in the shadows, and she looks up in terror as the dark aura slams Suho hard against the wall. Our wolf-like marksman watches in horror, realizing that someone will die if he doesn't act. He struggles to understand why his own world is breaking his rules, but pulls out his trusty laptop to intervene, with trembling hands as he loads a physical magazine. He holds a heavy round, cursing his bad luck with every bullet, and pulls up the system interface to modify his weapon, spending a whopping 104 SP to boost his attack power. Our laptop-toting cadet runs forward, focusing on his stats to close the massive gap in power, and aims his weapon directly at the target before pulling the trigger. He screams, "Kim Suho, move!" and fires a blinding bullet of light that strikes the monster dead-on, unleashing a massive, deafening explosion. Our gun-toting author aims his Desert Eagle forward with complete focus, focusing on his target during a highly tense moment. In the distance, a mysterious hooded figure with glowing eyes watches the clash. Kim Suho trades blows with a dark, shadowy beast, while Hajin keeps his distance, watching the sinister monster laugh manically as it grabs Ki Naeun by the throat. Suho rushes to her aid while our exhausted extra collapses, and Hajin gasps, "I've bought enough time," before he looks up with sudden, glowing determination in his eyes. Our laptop-toting cadet stands tall in a powerful stance, surrounded by crackling energy, which surges forward like a physical blade to cut through the heavy air. A bright flash of light erupts across the plaza, as Suho swings his glowing sword downward in a final, decisive strike. The monster is struck directly by the blade, letting out a painful shriek, and leaving Suho to kneel in exhaustion in front of his defeated foe. Suho struggles to stand, gripping his sword tightly, before he rushes over to ask Ki Naeun if she's all right. Suho looks down at her with deep concern, while our weary wolf-eyed sniper rubs his neck, and Hajin mutters, "Her brother will be here to comfort her soon." He watches the scene with a focused and sharp gaze, leaving the two main characters together in the dimly lit rubble. Suddenly, Ki Naeun reacts in total shock and vomits from the sheer trauma of the battle. A pack of glowing-eyed monsters charges forward to ambush them, but they are instantly sliced to pieces, falling to the ground in heaps. Standing amidst the carnage is the vice-captain of Creator's Sacred Grace, dual-wielding her swords, as a frantic medic runs toward her from a nearby ambulance. Nearby, a red-haired investigator reports that the demonic human was killed by 3 cube cadets, which immediately catches the attention of a curious, brown-haired woman. Her eye widens in surprise as she hears the list of names, but Seung-ah is already dashing across the plaza, moving like a visual glitch across the screen and stopping right in front of Kim Hajin on the sidewalk. He flashes him a warm, friendly smile and lets him know that Suho is waiting for him inside. Hajin sits on a nearby bench, completely stressed out and wondering how she knew he was looking for Suho. He pulls out his laptop to analyze the strange encounter, wondering if her sudden approach means the story's timeline is beginning to warp. He slumps over in frustration, remembering that everything was supposed to progress without any major issues, until our laptop-toting cadet groans, "This novel has a co-author." He realizes his original predictions are now completely useless because someone else is editing his work. His face pales in absolute shock, and he frantically starts typing commands into his laptop. Reading the updated system logs, Hajin snaps, "This bastard!" His hand hovers over the trackpad as he freezes in terror, staring at the screen with wide, disbelieving eyes. The database reveals a mythical black creature staring back with 4 glowing eyes, its massive claw raised as if ready to strike. Hajin rubs his temple, trying to stay calm under the sudden pressure, and decides he needs a massive upgrade, pulling on sunglasses to mask his intense focus. He stands tall in a relaxed but ready pose, as purple magical energy begins to gather around a strange, glowing symbol. The dark energy swirls around him like ink dropping into water, unlocking a powerful brand-new sigil labeled as his second power. Suddenly, a knight in white armor is blasted backward by the sheer force of this awakening, leaving a young child to stare up in absolute shock at the massive transformation. Instructor Kim Soo-hyuk arrives on the scene and barks, "Kim Soo-ho, Kim Hajin," as he orders the tired cadets to skip the details for now and head straight back to the dorms. When Hajin asks about Ki Naeun, the instructor explains she's on sick leave with her family, leaving Suho to turn toward Hajin with a deeply confused expression. Our laptop-toting cadet begins typing, muttering that she'll be fine since her brother is with her, which completely baffles Suho, who has absolutely no idea what brother he is talking about. Confused, Hajin pulls up Naeun's student profile on his computer, finding that her stats are exactly as he originally wrote them, until his screen suddenly flashes with a terrifying new update. He reads a tragic news report about the legendary hero Ki Jin-yoon falling into an unexpected coma, and Hajin gasps, "What is this?" as he stares at the altered records of Operation Fireflake, the very mission meant to bring her brother endless glory. In the original draft, a young Ki Naeun was meant to grow up incredibly proud of her heroic older brother, but a sudden ping on his system reveals a devastating reality. The screen warns him that because the protagonist had too many supporters, the co-author decided to alter the plot, branding Ki Jin-yoon with a terrible demonic mark that corrupts his mana channels like rust eating through an engine. Our former writer stares at the screen with absolute dread, while Ki Naeun sits entirely alone in a dark, cold hospital room. She curls up in her bed with her head resting on her knees, until the door swings open and her father rushes inside with deep panic in his eyes. She gasps in surprise to see him there and quickly tries to put on a brave face, insisting she's completely fine. Her father desperately offers to call in the best doctors, but she just brushes him off with forced annoyance, trying to hide her trembling hands as she looks away. She quietens down, looking at her father with soft, pleading eyes, and asks if she can see her brother one last time before they leave. Her father's face freezes in a look of pure, heartbreaking pain, but he gently takes her hand and gives her his quiet permission. The tragic truth is that demons leave these marks on humans to slowly turn them into demon seeds, and Hajin calculates that the incubation period is already halfway through. Sitting alone in the dark, our extra-turned hero realizes there is only one way to solve this twisted situation. Before the demon can fully awaken and consume Ki Jin-yoon's body, Hajin resolves he must be killed, but he is immediately paralyzed by the sheer impossibility of the task. No mercenary guild in the world would ever take a contract to assassinate a member of the powerful Ki family, and because there are no visible signs of the corruption, he can't even report it to the authorities. If left alone, Kim Soo-ho won't be strong enough to stop the emerging demon, leading to countless hero deaths, which would completely derail the future storyline and destroy the world he built. He sinks into deep, agonizing silence as the weight of the universe presses down on him, and our reluctant assassin whispers, "I have to kill him," leaving his desk chair cast in a cold, lonely shadow. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, cadets whisper about how a regular student could never have survived that monster, but Naeun wonders, "But that gunman," her expression turning somber as she thinks of her mysterious savior. Nurse gently interrupts her to announce that visiting hours are officially over, forcing her to say a quiet, tearful goodbye to her comatose brother. She slowly walks out of the ward, her face falling as she steps into the quiet hallway. She walks alone through the dark, echoing corridor, dragging her feet like a clockwork toy running out of spring, while Hajin sits in his dark room, trying to force himself to just let things go. But Naeun's eyes flash with sudden, intense focus in the dark, as she whispers the name of the mysterious marksman she cannot seem to forget. Within the glowing Tower of Heroes, our sharp-eyed heiress Yu Yonha is hard at work, digging through records of the recent museum attack where traces of a rare light attribute mana were left behind. Desperate to recruit this mysterious powerhouse, she reviews security footage of the three cadets at the scene, instantly marking Kim Soo-ho and Ki Naeun as prime suspects, while completely overlooking a bottom-tier cadet ranked 934th. Meanwhile, our laptop-toting cadet Kim Hajin is busy typing away, utilizing his invisible screen to double-check the novel's settings, and establishing a 30-meter radar to alert him of any plot deviations. Suddenly, a shadow falls over him, as Ki Naeun stands over him demanding, "Spar with me," causing our wolf-like marksman to give her a flat look of annoyance, declining the offer only for her to snap, "Are you scared?" Hajin warns her that he might accidentally hurt her with live ammunition, prompting a nearby instructor to quickly step between them, ordering our hot-headed archer back to her place because Hajin lacks a training weapon. As he turns away, Hajin feels no need to apologize, his scarred hands serving as a silent reminder of his true goal, which is to assassinate her comatose brother before he awakens as a demon. Naeun stomping away in frustration, the scene shifts to the grand orientation hall of the Veritas Club, where the charismatic club president Yoon Hyun welcomes the crowd with a polite, "Welcome to Veritas Orientation," explaining how their club focuses on analyzing monsters and planning raid strategies. while the seated cadets look through their handouts with growing interest. But our gun-toting author only watches Yoon Hyun's perfect charm, knowing that his attractive aura is actually a cover for demonic powers, which will soon trigger several kidnappings and infiltrations at Cube, because this popular president is secretly a demonic human. While the smiling predator hides his true colors, Yoo Yeon-ha sits back with her arms crossed, listening as he introduces a simple test to warm up the room. Massive hologram of the mountain tyrant flickers to life, towering over the cadets with 50 years of terrifying history, as Yoon Hyun mentions that a monster's vital points can be sold for billions, before calling on Yoo Yeon-ha to guess its weak spot, where she admits that there is no known public information. But when the session ends and cadets head to the after-party, Hajin approaches her, leaving the rest of the class wondering what business he has with her. Our laptop-toting cadet knows this information is his golden ticket, stopping the surprised heiress dead in her tracks. He reminds her of her family's legendary rise 50 years ago, which turned their guild into a massive powerhouse, and notes that the Vice Guild leader's rising power currently threatens her succession, causing her to stare intensely and demand, "What are you trying to say?" Only for him to offer her a game-changer, promising, "I'll tell you the weakness of the high-grade monster, Mountain Tyrant." As she gapes in disbelief at his unexpected proposal, he explains that a tiny blue mark on its heel will completely freeze the beast, demanding access to the essential armory that her guild manages. His target is the legendary Desert Eagle handgun, leaving her completely speechless at his audacity, even as she desperately demands to see his proof or documents, her eyes filled with deep calculation. Hajin warns her that she will lose out big time if she hesitates, knowing that a multi-billion-won secret is far too valuable to ignore. Days later, a flustered secretary calls the raid team in a panic, instructing them to keep an eye out for that exact heel mark just in case. While the rest of the world sleeps, our former writer gets a harsh reality check and gasps in horror. 300 million. He realizes his body's original owner maxed out his credit line, leaving him with a bank balance that is practically screaming for help, which means loan sharks will sell his organs before he can even graduate, forcing Hajin to accept that he needs to find a quick source of income. Since towers and dungeons are constantly appearing across the globe, he looks into field hunting as a realistic way to earn cash, scanning a map of local hunting fields, only to realize his physical stats are barely superior to an average adult, making a standard hunt with his low-grade gear incredibly risky. Just as he begins to despair, a holographic alert chiming at his door delivers a mysterious parcel, sent directly from Yoo Yeon-ha herself, where he opens his door to find a heavy silver briefcase, kneeling down to unlatch the locks, and finding his brand-new Desert Eagle resting inside. Armed and ready, he travels to the low-danger field region of Wonju, where the local portal receptionist bows with immense respect, treating him like royalty the moment she realizes he is a cube cadet, allowing him to step out into the bustling station entrance, his heavy military boot hitting the pavement, as he looks over a massive, neon-lit hub teeming with foreign hunters looking to make a quick buck. The chaotic crowd is filled with loud shouts, as a blonde adventurer tries to recruit a mage for a high-risk mountain run, while our wolf-like marksman weaves through the noisy streets, passing an agent who is settling a cheap bounty for 3 hobgoblins. Knowing that finding his own agent will make things much smoother, he looks around for a professional to guide him, when a nervous young man suddenly approaches him. The rookie fumbles his wallet and drops a pile of business cards on the floor, revealing his name to be Park Soo-hyuk, whom Hajin instantly recognizes as the future super agent of the world's strongest hero, even as he awkwardly confesses, "I've only just started out." Seeing a golden opportunity to lock down a genius ally, our extra-turned hero extends his hand saying, "I'll make a contract with you." The ecstatic rookie eagerly shakes his hand and leads Hajin straight into the dense forest, babbling nervously and offering to act as human shield if things get too dangerous, while pointing out some fresh hobgoblin tracks on the muddy ground, though Hajin calculates that the cost of magic bullets will eat up all his profits, pointing a finger instead toward a much bigger target in the clearing, where a massive, tusked monster is grazing peacefully. He stammers in absolute terror, "Isn't that a steel boar?" Soo-hyuk warns him that a gun cannot pierce its armor like hide, unaware that Hajin's weapon is a custom-made masterpiece from Yoo Yeon-ha, its golden barrel glowing with concentrated magical energy. Hajin raises the gun, explaining that he has already modified the handgun's capabilities. "I've also added a certain setting to this thing using SB." The agent pleads with him to stop before he makes the beast angry, but Hajin simply closes one eye to align his sights and pulls the trigger. The shot rings out like a crack of thunder, hitting the beast like a falling meteor, and sending the armored monster spinning like a coin tossed into the dirt. With the beast's glowing eye instantly fading into darkness, Hajin takes a slow step forward on the edge of the cliff. He looks down at the smoking barrel and mutters a quiet, "Not bad." Our gun-toting author watches his customized Desert Eagle pulse with a vibrant blue aura, prompting his stunned rookie partner to gape in utter disbelief at his raw martial talent. Hajin merely shrugs it off as standard procedure, before pulling the trigger and sending a blinding flash of gunfire into the open sky. Across the vast valley, a massive black pelican hovers over a distant, sunlit cliff, leaving the wide-eyed agent adjusting his glasses in pure shock, wondering how anyone can aim that far. But to our wolf-like marksman, a target at that extreme distance feels close enough to touch. The The giant, defeated bird crashes down like a fallen meteor, and as the two hunters stand over the massive, heavy carcass, they realize carrying it back by hand is out of the question. They decide it is much smarter to call for a magical cleanup crew, letting the reliable agent handle the tax and deposit math, which they seal with a warm, professional handshake. Before parting, the suited agent curiously asks what our extra-turned hero plans to spend his hard-earned cash on, but Hajin simply stares ahead with a beautifully vacant expression, keeping his genius financial schemes to himself. Back at his desk, our laptop-toting cadet pulls up his screen to analyze a recently raided dungeon, clicking the buy button to lock in a massive stock investment that will guarantee him free money. With his easy profits secured, he confirms the transaction on the digital interface, before leaning back to search for a highly exclusive, underground information network known as the Violet Society. He stares into space, plotting how to manipulate the future of this world, specifically the Chameleon Troupe, a band of devastatingly powerful villains who are destined to wreck the later story. Since these criminals absolutely despise demonic humans, he plans to recruit their leader to help execute Ki Jin-yoon. But as he watches the system's screen process his request, a sudden, jarring error flashes across the display. He jumps back in alarm, staring in absolute panic as the screen glitches wildly, threatening to destroy his only bridge back to the real world. His eye wide with sheer desperation, he finally breathes a sigh of relief when the glowing screen suddenly stabilizes and returns to normal. Later, Hajin sports a sleek silver-white wig at a trendy cafe to keep a low profile, while nearby, the arrogant Shin Jong-hak sits looking thoroughly annoyed at another elite social gathering. The golden-eyed elitist complains that these high-society meetings are a massive waste of his valuable time, but the bob-cut strategist Yu Yonha tells him to endure it, because rubbing elbows with high society is essential. She teasingly asks about his grades, reminding him that the top spot is his only acceptable home, though the haughty youth simply dismisses her as he browses his holographic display. Their conversation is interrupted as the hot-headed archer, Ki Naeun, marches into the cafe, prompting Jong-hak to stand up and loudly call out her name to get her attention. He sits down and immediately fires a blunt warning, telling him she prefers staying home when he is around. As the two childhood friends bicker relentlessly over the table, Yonha watches them with a subtle, worried frown on her face, until the ponytail Spitfire takes a slow sip of her drink and drops a bombshell by asking if they have ever heard of Kim Hajin. Yonha blinks in surprise, asking what the plain cadet can possibly do, only for Naeun to explain that they were grouped together during the museum raid. In a brief flashback, the monstrous demonic human overwhelms the young trainees with brutal force. Yet amidst the chaos, our gun-toting author steps forward with his simple handgun, blasting the beast's arm completely off in a display of power that leaves Naeun feeling deeply unsettled. He closely monitors her friend's reaction to see if she knows anything, directly putting the bob-cut strategist on the spot by asking if she noticed anything strange during their team-up. Internally, Yonha resolves to launch a full investigation, needing to evaluate if this mysterious sharpshooter is a tool she can use. But outwardly, she casually sips her tea and plays it down, claiming he showed no such power during their physical exams. Yet her narrowed eyes betray her true thoughts, wondering if the cadet is deliberately hiding his true strength. Naeun rests her chin on her hand, voicing her wildest theory that the boy might actually be an undercover demon, which leaves both her and Jong-hak sitting in a brief, stunned silence. Yonha quickly dismisses the idea with a chibai laugh, pointing out that demons will never willingly slaughter their own kind. Meanwhile, back in his dorm, our extra-turned hero suddenly gasps as a burning sensation erupts in his right arm, staring down in shock as a brilliant crimson energy begins to bleed through his skin. Collapses onto the hard floor in absolute agony, as a torrent of mystical information floods his brain, revealing that this star-shaped stigma is a literal authority of the creator. His hand ignites with a blinding, crackling white light. While back at the peaceful cafe, Naeun continues to ponder the mysteries of her strange classmate, unaware that her target is currently screaming on his floor, clutching his newly awakened magic crest. And as she receives a comforting message that her beloved older brother will arrive shortly, she looks out the window with a quiet, distant expression, completely detached from the sheer chaos of Hajin's body, desperately bonding with the creator's ancient power. Our wolf-like marksman coldly raises his black handgun to lock onto his target, his sharp, focused gaze completely unyielding behind the deadly barrel. Deep within the digital matrix of this fabricated universe, the destiny of this world's true hero is already beginning to shift. Following the museum incident, a sparkling plaque is awarded to the heroic trio of cadets, but our gun-toting author can barely appreciate it as he winces and clutches his heavily bandaged arm. He hunches over his desk during morning lectures, the residual throbbing from the awakening stigma still stinging like fire, only to find the hot-headed archer Ki Naeun glaring at him from the very next desk with a hostile look. The frustrated girl rounds on him and aggressively commands him to shut his mouth, even though our extra-turned hero hasn't even spoken a single word aloud. She leans in close to ask if he has already forgotten the museum fight, puffing proudly about being the one who graciously saves his life. The blue-haired sword prodigy Kim Suho quickly steps in to mediate their petty squabble, But the stubborn archer grabs Hajin's arm in protest while he sighs in complete exhaustion. Once the dust settles, the two male cadets sit side by side in companionable silence, and Suho takes a quiet moment to offer his sincere gratitude for the backup, acknowledging that they never would have survived the terrifying demonic human without Hajin's intervention. Hajin humbly waves it off, secretly knowing that the original protagonist is far too modest, since without his interference, the Sword Saint is destined to unlock an even greater, world-ending power. As Suho sits deep in thought, processing the humble marksman's unexpected words, a panicked cadet suddenly bursts through the doors, screaming for everyone to stand at attention. The atmosphere instantly grows heavy as a legendary, supreme hero strides into the academy hall, cursing under his breath about the utter annoyance of having to attend a childish school ceremony. The legendary Valhalla's wolf stands at the main podium, radiating a terrifying pressure that smothers the room, leaving both the elite trainees and the prodigy Suho feeling completely tense under his overwhelming gaze. The announcer's voice echoes over the speakers, inviting the award recipients to step forward onto the stage, where the legendary master towers over the young cadets with their framed certificates. Sehyuk hands the award to the blue-haired prodigy while confirming his identity, grinning as he remarks that he finally understands why the elite are clamoring to recruit him. He casually advises the young prodigy to avoid the hero association entirely, suggesting a powerful private guild instead, and Suho smiles brightly, politely responding that he still believes his destiny lies in becoming a true hero. Sehyuk merely shrugs and gestures with his finger, dismissing the youthful idealism with a quiet chuckle, before turning his attention to a blushing female archer who is looking incredibly embarrassed. The master bluntly states he has no intention of playing tutor just because her wealthy father asks, flatly declaring that a legendary spearman has zero interest in teaching a stubborn bow user. Finally, he hands the last certificate to our surprised extra-turned hero, who quietly accepts the honor. With the tedious ceremony finally out of the way, Hajin happily strolls over to Cafe Cadet, sitting down at an outdoor table to celebrate with a delicious slice of cake and a sweet drink, as he marvels at the massive 15 million won reward money he secures from slaying the demon. He eagerly opens his trusty laptop, preparing to dump his newly acquired fortune back into the stock market, before rolling up his sleeve to inspect the star-shaped brand pulsing on his forearm. He reads through the vague system description, which cryptically explains that the stigma can be manipulated in any way he wishes, and as if responding to his thoughts, the star-shaped crest suddenly ignites with an intense, blinding radiance. Startled, he slams the laptop shut to avoid drawing a scene in the public cafe, realizing he needs to return to the safety of his private dorm before experimenting any further. First, our laptop-toting cadet boots up the browser to access a forbidden online network, revealing a hidden database containing the darkest secrets of this magical society. Contemplates his limited options on the bright screen, honing in on the notorious Violet Society, an underground forum that functions as a dark trade hub. This shady network acts as a hidden marketplace where the elite trade information, weapons, and dangerous requests, providing a vital black market economy that even the world government deliberately chooses to ignore. Since he currently has more than enough story points to bypass the massive entrance fee, he prepares to finalize his registration and click the sign-up button, until a shadow falls over his table as a mysterious woman silently approaches him. The elegant scout smiles and asks if he knows who she is, noting that she is highly surprised when he abruptly vanishes right after the award ceremony ends. He slides a sleek professional business card onto the wooden table, which carries immense weight because this is the legendary guild master Scout Yoon Seunga herself. Her lips curl into a polite, intriguing grin as she leans on her hand to lock eyes with our stunned writer, sweetly asking if he would mind answering a few curious questions. Sitting across from Yoon Seunga in a quiet cafe, our gun-toting author watches her every move, fully aware that underneath her polite press persona lies a predatory beast who will ruthlessly discard anyone who fails to meet her standards. While connection with Korea's top guild would be massive, he cuts her off before she can even finish her pitch, flatly declaring, "I have nothing to tell you." She tries to smooth it over by asserting her power as Korea's #1 guild's vice-captain, but he fires back that he only cares if that interest is genuine, knowing she is only acting on temporary curiosity, and deciding a firm rejection is the only way to make her take him seriously. Leaving the elite scout completely stunned, our laptop-toting cadet focuses on his own growth, activating the magical stigma on his wrist to summon a shimmering, ethereal dagger. He holds the weapon as it floats effortlessly, relying on his magic power stat and feeling relieved that he can actually use magic in this world. Pondering his next move, he raises his glowing wrist to summon the legendary Book of Truth, an omniscient artifact that promises to answer any question that your magic power permits. To test it, he asks, "What's my height?" Only for a sudden warning to blare from his wrist-worn device. Red emergency notice flashes, forcing him to realize the story's second major arc has officially begun. Sinister conspiracy is targeting 5 specific cadets, leaving blood-stained training rooms and a string of mysterious disappearances that our main characters must somehow navigate. While the sharp-eyed heiress Yu Yonha becomes a key player in this arc, our extra-turned hero knows he could solve the mystery by hunting the culprit early, but hesitates in the shadows, fearing that a premature intervention might break the plot entirely. The next day, a cadet points out a ridiculous scene to Kim Suho where an arrogant bully is stepping on a heavy barbell, mocking our wolf-like marksman as he struggles on the gym floor. A crowd of students gathers to jeer at his pathetic physical stats, and though the righteous Suho tries to step in, the class president holds him back, warning him to stay out of it. The other cadets assume this display of weakness must be an act, gossiping that Kim Hajin hides his power after his legendary feat against the demonic human, while our poor author is actually just struggling for his life under the iron bar. Bullies raise a fist to escalate the beatdown, drawing the attention of a skeptical Ki Naeun, until the stern instructor Kim Soo-hyuk roars, "Why is there so much commotion during training hours?" The strict teacher orders everyone to get together for the theoretical quiz results, leaving the cadets panicking over their failing grades until the leaderboard reveals a shocking development. Kim Hajin is in first place. He internally chuckles, knowing he basically cheated off his own author's settings, but his academic victory catches the eye of the elegant Rachel Louise, who stands ready with her rapier. He stares back at the third-ranked English princess, knowing she is about to become a major player. While Rachel Louise is warmly congratulated on her prestigious acceptance into Cube, she politely smiles and promises to uphold her family's royal honor, only to end up holding her head in sheer distress when instructor Kim Soo-hyuk praises Kim Hajin's brilliant exam paper. The blonde princess groans over the sheer difficulty of the course material, while our extra-turned hero looks blankly at his device, leaving her burning with frustration over how this low-ranked cadet could possibly outstudy her. Meanwhile, the object of her frustration is logging into his secure laptop late at night, hoping to turn his newly acquired Book of Truth into an information broker business for some quick pocket money. After registering himself as a secret online seller, a holographic pulse fills his dark room as he prepares to invest his hard-earned story points. Our laptop-toting cadet eyes his standard Desert Eagle, knowing his current low stats won't protect him from Shin Jong-hak's dangerous faction. So he pulls up the upgrade interface and begins typing the commands to add a sniper rifle transformation feature. He pauses with a wide-eyed stare, wondering, "Did I go overboard?" As the metal structure begins to break apart, extending its heavy barrel into a sleek, deadly sniper rifle hovering before him. Admiring the weapon, our gun-toting author chuckles, "Ha, I can surprise them," letting steam rise from the freshly forged chamber. To complement his lethal new range, he accesses his empty skill slots to purchase an art, which refers to highly polished physical techniques, realizing that a sniper's survival relies entirely on superior positioning. He taps the interface to buy a high-grade parkour skill, staring at his hands to see if the sudden agile instincts have kicked in, only for his wrist-worn device to ring sharply. He opens the alert and reads the grim words, "The second victim," staring into the dark as he realizes real lives are being snuffed out, and questioning if he can truly stand by when he knows exactly who the killer is targeting next. The next morning, the cadets gather in the massive outdoor training hall, where instructor Kim Soo-hyuk welcomes them to a highly specialized class. He points toward the ominous entrance of an artificial dungeon, warning them to stay completely alert even if the monster puppets inside are simulated. The righteous Kim Suho listens intently as the joint dungeon raid begins, combining the elite Veritas and discipline classes into massive team-up groups. As the cadets scramble to find their assigned partners, our wolf-like marksman clutches his handgun, well aware that a real demonic trap might be lurking inside, and hoping his newly crafted attribute bullets will keep them alive. Suddenly, a glitchy system error flashes a setting change occurrence. Notice, leaving Hajin horrified as 3 critical settings are silently altered behind the scenes. The training grounds erupt into total chaos as team assignments are scrambled, forcing a sassy cadet to approach Suho to check their status, leading the legendary protagonist to shake hands firmly with the calculating Yu Yonha as they are grouped into Team 8. While the other cadets gossip about their new squad mates, a handsome, blonde classmate steps forward to introduce himself. The boy introduces himself as Sven, smiling pleasantly at his teammates with an elegance that hides a dark, brewing storm. As the joint training begins, our former writer narrows his eyes to analyze his temporary classmates, starting with a self-absorbed narcissist named Jadon, who introduces himself and his team with a fake, friendly smile, only to immediately butcher our wolf-like marksman's name and prompt an annoyed correction of, "It's Kim Hajin." Next is Sven, a heavily praised government-funded scholar from Germany, who initially seems like a perfectly pleasant high achiever, arriving at Cube with big dreams of climbing straight to the very top. Reality at the academy is a cruel meat grinder, leaving even the most brilliant international stars completely crushed, as a suffocating wave of inferiority takes root in Sven's mind, fueled by the unstable emotional cocktail of his teenage years. This desperation drives him to sell his soul to a demon for a massive surge of dark power, a terrifying plot twist that our gun-toting author realizes has been pushed forward by the mysterious co-author. Before he can process this, an arrogant cadet slaps a mocking hand onto his shoulder, which Hajin immediately swats away with a cold command to get lost, clenching his fist as he reflects on how his reputation has plummeted to absolute rock bottom, thanks to nasty, groundless rumors about him blackmailing students and spending weekends in Seoul's seediest districts. When the teams are finally called to enter the training grounds, a classmate asks about his top ranking in the supporter division, and Hajin fires back that Jadin is merely dead weight, holding the rest of the team down. They step into the dark, echoing maw of the artificial dungeon, proceeding cautiously through the damp stone corridors, until they reach a complex intersection of multiple paths. The team hesitates, looking to their designated marksman for guidance, and our laptop-toting cadet confidently points toward tunnel number 6, prompting skeptical glances from the others, though they ultimately follow him when they realize his perception is incredibly sharp. He walks ahead, deeply disappointed by how his temporary team refuses to stand up for him against the malicious rumors. He shifts his focus to Ki Naeun, knowing Sven's demonic contract will put her in fatal danger if he doesn't intervene. But his strategic thoughts are cut short by Jadin snapping at him to worry about the immediate threats, to which Hajin casually points out the massive fire salamander resting right in front of them as the dungeon's trigger switch. An arrow flies through the dark cave, striking near the sleeping beast and waking it up in a daze, prompting the bob-cut strategist Yu Yonha to rally her squad into a tight battle formation. He steps forward as a powerful current of electrical magic crackles around her arm, unleashing a devastating, wide sweep of her weapon, followed by a rapid, high-voltage sequence that leaves the beast shrieking in absolute agony as the blinding shockwave rips through its defenses. Coordinated attacks rain down from the entire squad, finishing off the glowing monster in a spectacular burst of energy and clearing the first major obstacle of their run. As the dungeon walls rumble and begin to shift, our extra-turned hero marvels at Yonha's rapid development, only for a sudden tremor to throw him completely off balance and send them both tumbling, landing in a tangled, awkward heap on the cold stone floor, where the sharp-eyed heiress flustredly demands that he let go immediately. But as they pick themselves up and complain about the chaotic collision, a strange, unnatural glow starts emanating from a deep crevice in the wall. Hajin's eye widens in sudden, icy realization as heavy, desperate breathing echoes from a nearby passage, followed by a wounded cadet collapsing under a hail of venomous darts and begging his partner to just leave me. His teammate screams at him to get back up and run, horrified by how a simple training exercise could feature lethal poison traps, just as a towering, monstrous entity rises from the shadows, forcing the panicked survivors to scatter in sheer terror. Standing in the darkness, our wolf-like marksman realizes the real nightmare has officially begun. Standing in the shifting dark, our extra-turned hero raises his signature weapon, locking his calm, wolf-like gaze onto the looming shadows, as a sinister, dark silhouette watches him silently from behind. Nearby, the blue-haired hero Kim Suho remains on high alert as powerful explosions rock the cavernous training facility. Violent waves of heat erupt from the darkness, prompting a cadet to grip his defensive focus tool with white knuckles, while the athletic archer Ki Naeun ducks behind a shimmering magical shield. She rolls gracefully across the rocky ground, while our gun-toting author provides cover fire, as Kim Suho unleashes a massive, sweeping crescent of light that slams violently against a heavy stone pillar. His glowing blade bites deep into the stone floor, and he pauses to ask, "Are they more or less dealt with?" The cadets breathe a sigh of relief, assuming the exercise is going smoothly despite the earlier trap. But our laptop-toting cadet keeps his eyes glued to an ominous floating ember. Tiny, flickering fire spirit drifts lazily through the humid air, suddenly catching a nearby defender completely off guard, as it manifests a blazing, razor-sharp maw, prompting a terrified scream of, "Commander!" A colossal torrent of pure fire surges toward the group, but Suho stands his ground with a fierce, unwavering focus. Before the flames can incinerate them, a hand reaches forward to summon a counterspell, projecting a massive, swirling seal that rapidly expands into a towering wall of water, which intercepts the raging inferno with a violent hiss. The water barrier shimmers brightly under the incredible pressure, absorbing the intense impact and unleashing a thick cloud of vapor. As the blistering steam slowly begins to clear, the scorched, damp cavern floor is finally revealed. The group gathers around the fizzling remnants of the attack, stunned by the overwhelming, raw power of the creature, which feels far too intense to be a mere artificial training puppet. One of the frustrated fighters grabs his teammate's collar, demanding to know why they hid their water attribute gift, until the sharp-eyed heiress Yu Yonha steps in to claim it was merely the effect of her magic armament. Ki Naeun remains deeply skeptical, pointing out that this was undoubtedly a real, living monster, though Yonha smoothly rationalizes that it simply evolved naturally in this dungeon and suggests leaving it for extra points. Walking slightly behind, Our wolf-like marksman immediately recognizes her explanation is a total lie, because magic armaments with elemental attributes are far too expensive for ordinary cadets to purchase. He glances toward their teammate, wondering with a cold shiver if the guy is secretly a demonic human, just as a towering, magma-coated golem rumbles to life in the next chamber. The scouting cadets quickly agree to retreat and wait for reinforcements, especially since the difficulty of this exercise has spiked to a ridiculous, lethal degree. They look down in growing panic at the shivering form of Sven, who weakly gasps, "I'm sorry, guys," as the dark poison from the arrow begins to spread. In his agony, a towering hooded specter appears in his vision, addressing him as child and freezing him with an overwhelming absolute dread. Glowing, spectral hand reaches down to offer him salvation, twisting Sven's face into a mask of pure desperation as he reaches up to grip the dark entity's hand, letting the massive, multi-eyed shadow swallow his mind. A monstrous claw of pure darkness wraps around him, ripping a throat-shredding scream of raw agony from his lungs before his body collapses limply to the cold floor. His terrified teammates crowd around him, shouting in confusion and desperately trying to hold his thrashing limbs down. But Suho's eyes widen as a colossal shadow rises right behind them. The entity's eyes glow with a malicious, crimson light as it opens its massive maw to exhale a devastating, blinding torrent of fire. Mysterious golden symbol flashes just before a colossal monster claws toward it, unleashing a fiery explosion that rips the chamber apart. As terrified cadets scramble to escape the flames, Ki Naeun runs for her life while carrying a wounded teammate. But the monster strikes again, crushing the stone floor and blasting both girls high into the air. Naeun crashes hard against the rubble, coughing up blood as her vision begins to blur, and she looks up at the towering horror, realizing that she is completely outmatched and about to die. The beast raises its arm to deliver the killing blow, but a flash of bright blue energy cuts through the darkness, and a glowing bullet streaks through the air. The magical round detonates against the rock wall, shattering the stone and raining down heavy debris, distracting the giant golem just enough for Naeun to catch her breath. He stares in absolute confusion at the source of the blast, spotting a silhouette standing far in the distance, where our gun-toting author calmly aims his shining desert eagle. Just minutes before, he stood before a massive stone blockade, insisting that the boss field lay right behind it, even as an arrogant sword cadet demanded he shoot it down. The loudmouth cadet tries to break it himself, swinging with a brilliant orange arc, but his sword strike only produces useless sparks. He screams in sheer frustration at the unbroken wall, while our wolf-like marksman quietly watches his useless tantrum, until a blonde cadet points to the ceiling, noticing a tiny gap at the very top. The annoying cadet complains that climbing 10 meters is impossible, but Hajin simply shrugs and tells him he's going ahead, activating an athletic art that wraps his hands in blue light. He launches himself upward, scaling the sheer rock face like a spider. Back in the main chamber, Kim Suho looks on in shock as the solid stone wall starts to crumble, leaving the handsome rank 1 hero cursing under his breath. A legendary magma beast crawls out of the deep crack, and our laptop-toting cadet immediately takes his position on a high ledge, shocked that the monster broke free of its scripted patterns so quickly. He yells for Naeun to snap out of her daze, forcing his trembling hands to keep his weapon steady. Suho unleashes a brilliant, sweeping strike that rocks the golem, chipping away a massive chunk of its shoulder, which crashes down to the floor in a cloud of dust. Spear-wielding cadet lunges forward, but her thrust bounces off harmlessly, even as another teammate strikes from above with a heavy sword. Naeun struggles to her feet and begs her allies to hold the line, raising her bow with a look of fierce determination. She channels her magical aura into a glowing arrow, shouting for them to buy her just a few more seconds. Warrior slams his weapon to distract the beast while she draws back, and Hajin fires cover shots while others drag the wounded away. The monster's glowing eye narrows right before a crushing impact, as a blinding force cuts deep into its rocky armor. The graceful English princess, Rachel Louise, softly apologizes for her delay, landing elegantly onto the battlefield with her rapier drawn. She spins through the air in a blur of motion, confronting the towering golem with a cold, majestic aura. Recalling her failure in the original timeline, she resolves to make this fight different, her eyes flashing with newfound determination as she unleashes a storm of elemental sword strikes, shattering the colossal magma beast into 1,000 tiny pieces. But as the dust settles, Hajin looks on from the shadows, knowing the real nightmare is only beginning. In the aftermath of the intense battle, our gun-toting author stands tall, his focus entirely locked onto his next calculated move. Thick smoke and massive stone debris fill the chamber, where the remnants of the giant beast sizzle against the glowing lava. Exhausted cadets struggle to carry their wounded classmates, wondering if this nightmare will even boost their grades, as Ki Naeun rushes over to make sure the rest of the squad is still breathing. They praise Hajin for his incredible shot, but he casually shrugs it off as a simple finishing move. Meanwhile, Kim Suho pulls him aside, deeply concerned that their corrupted classmate Sven has only delayed his demonic transformation. Hajin quietly agrees, knowing a ticking demonic time bomb is actually far more dangerous than an immediate threat. Plumping down on a nearby rock to catch his breath, he notices Naeun staring at him with a strangely intense expression. When our wolf-like marksman finally grunts a greeting, she steps closer, the heat of the lava cave reflecting in her flushed cheeks. Fidgeting nervously, she mutters that she has something important to tell him, before suddenly shouting a very loud, very angry thank you. Hajin is absolutely flabbergasted by the sudden outburst, especially when she stomps her foot and screams that she said it, so he better drop it. Can hardly believe this notoriously stubborn girl actually expressed gratitude, recalling how she was raised as a treasured, spoiled princess, who spent her entire childhood beating up training dummies, pushing herself to the absolute limit, while hiding her deepest vulnerabilities from the world. Nayeon crosses her arms and looks away to hide her bright red face, and Hajin feels a sudden pang of sympathy for her, burdened by the heavy knowledge of her tragic future. She breaks the silence by asking why someone as strong as him lets bullies push him around, wondering why he doesn't just punch Shin Jonghak's annoying lackeys into orbit. He tells her he couldn't beat them even if he wanted to, but she calls him out, pointing out the ridiculous power of his gun. In response, our extra-turned hero raises his weapon, explaining that the Desert Eagle is actually a strictly forbidden private weapon. She panics, calling him a crazy son of a bitch and warning him that he will get expelled, but he shows her his wrist, revealing how he hides the gun inside his magical stigma. Still highly suspicious, she looks at him with narrowing eyes, wondering if he possesses a rare, legendary gift that multiplies the power of firearms. He decides to just let her believe that, and she happily promises to keep his secret as long as he behaves. As they prepare to leave the glowing chamber, she stops and asks if he has anything else to say to her. He looks back at her, his heart weighing heavily with a dark, unavoidable truth. He coldly tells her he has nothing to say, knowing he must maintain a distant, awkward boundary with her, because his ultimate mission in this world is to execute her beloved older brother. Another classmate asks if they are close, and she quickly denies it, hiding her disappointment, leaving the student entirely baffled by their strange dynamic. But before they can unpack the awkwardness, the test officially comes to an end. Back in the control room, panic-stricken operators scramble to fix the blacked-out cameras, while the school administration quickly sweeps the real monster invasion under the rug to avoid a massive public scandal. Resting his chin on his hand back in his dorm, Hajin realizes that corrupt, demonic humans inside the school's leadership successfully covered up the incident. He doodles on a notepad, trying to figure out why Sven didn't go full demon, knowing that a demonic contract hyperinflates a person's deepest obsessions, which could put Nayeon in grave danger. He fires up his laptop, determined to take preventive action, clicking on his chat logs with a heavy sigh, feeling a wave of guilt as he prepares to spy on his classmates' messages. He clutches his head in stress upon seeing a mention of the upcoming hunting club trip, recognizing it as the exact day his original manuscript scheduled Sven to go completely berserk. He resolves to follow them to the dangerous MT Gary dungeon when his smartwatch suddenly starts vibrating with an incoming call. He stares at the screen in disbelief, wondering why on earth the main protagonist is reaching out to him, as he reluctantly presses accept and says hello. On the other end, a smiling Suho holds up his tablet, asking if he happens to be free this coming Friday. CH022P016. Meanwhile, a thoroughly exhausted purple pig creature flops onto the floor, having survived another chaotic day. Our gun-loving creator stands ready with his modified Desert Eagle, aiming his weapon directly at us with the cold, focused eyes of a seasoned killer. But he isn't here to assassinate anyone, having traveled all the way to the lush, spiritual peaks of Mount Gari, where legendary treasures like glowing wild ginseng lie buried in the deepest roots. He immediately runs into Kim Chundong, a self-proclaimed master digger in a green vest, who looks down on our jacket-clad author for trying to navigate these wild woods with a simple paper map. The old-timer boasts that you have to read the mountain's flow to find anything of value, warning him, "You won't find a single ginseng root that way," completely unaware that the newbie he is lecturing actually wrote this entire world from scratch. The expert chuckles and walks away, leaving Hajin to sprint ahead into the dense foliage, where our clumsy cadet trips over a stubborn tree root and faceplants hard. But as he looks down in frustration, his eyes widen at a miraculous golden glow poking through the dirt. Without a second thought, he stuffs the massive, dirty root straight into his mouth, chewing furiously while holding onto a tree trunk to steady his surging energy. He leans against a cold, stone wall, briefly regretting that he just ate 700 million won worth of rare herbs, before taking a literal leap of faith off the edge of a massive cliff. He clings to the steep, dizzying rock face as he slides down, navigating through thick layers of vines and moss to find a hidden cavern entrance. He knows that an intermediate-grade Death Knight rules this dark dungeon, so our sharp-eyed extra carefully sneaks past the main boss chamber to find the hidden stage. Suddenly, a chilling spectral hand raises a massive horde of skeletal warriors from the dark, blocking his path and forcing him to draw his weapon for a brutal firefight. Surrounded by a swarm of screaming bones and spirits, he doesn't panic, calmly raising his Desert Eagle to level the playing field. He fires a blinding blast of holy light that obliterates the front line, shattering a skeleton into flying splinters of bone. His eyes glow with mystical power as he activates clairvoyance, mapping out the optimal path through the chaotic cavern walls. He leaps through the air while firing high-impact rounds, carving a clean path through the falling debris and dust, with a trail of smoke rising from his smoking barrel as he lands safely. He stands amidst the scattered bones of his fallen enemies, reflecting on the terrible future where a matured witch named Evandel builds an unstoppable fortress of the undead in Suwon. To prevent that dark tragedy and secure his own survival, he is here to claim two legendary items: the growth-type weapon called Etha, and Evandel's mystical seed. Etha is the very same golden relic that will eventually turn Tomer into a terrifying executive of Wicked. So our gun-loving creator steps toward a glowing gateway, entering a majestic chamber bathed in shimmering, ancient magical energy. And there, sitting quietly at the base of a crystal-encrusted tree, is the tiny, innocent baby witch, playing peacefully with a floating spark of magical light. She smiles as she reaches out her tiny hands, gasping in pure delight at the dancing glow. Hajin watches from the dark shadows, his heart heavy with guilt as he tells himself to snap out of it. He clenches his fist, muttering, "It has to be done," as he reminds himself he created this tragic story, stepping quietly into the chamber and reaching his hand forward to summon his ultimate power. He unleashes his stigma, converting his raw magical power into a piercing spear of pure light. Thanks to the mountain ginseng currently digesting in his stomach, he feels incredibly strong, crouching low as he charges his newfound energy to its absolute limit. A wave of blue magical energy explodes from his body, detonating in a brilliant, blinding flash that shakes the entire cavern. But as the smoke clears, Hajin's face pales in utter shock, staring down in disbelief and shouting, "She's still alive!" Evandel floats in midair, wrapped in an aura of dark purple magic, as violent energy arcs wildly from her tiny hands. Her eyes glaze over in a dazed, unstable trance, unleashing a violent storm of power that threatens to tear the cavern apart. A massive shockwave ripples across the rocky floor, forcing Hajin to shield his face in deep concern as the magical pressure peaks. From the deep shadows, cold eyes look down on the unfolding chaos, where a sinister, fanged mouth grins next to a blood-red blade. A slender hand pulls back dark hair, revealing the sharp features of a hidden observer who bears strange, crimson markings painted across her face. She fingers her ornate necklace, watching with quiet fascination, while wearing a cracked porcelain mask that drips with bloody designs. Suddenly, a bright pink flare of energy erupts, shocking the white-haired child, who stares in sheer bewilderment at a tall, slender pink figure of pure light. The young witch kneels in disbelief, as Etha gently wraps around her like a protective cocoon. CH023P029, while far away, the mysterious masked leader of the chameleon troop observes the birth of a new power. Back in his dorm, our laptop-toting cadet stares at his screen with a satisfied grin, watching his story points increase to 47 after putting the leftover mountain ginseng on the market for some quick cash. But his most critical acquisition floats right before his eyes. This thing, the glowing pink seed of Evandel. Even though her future self was feared as the infamous Witch of Despair, he knows she can become an invaluable ally if raised with proper care. The catch is that growing her requires a steady supply of fresh human blood, forcing him to briefly imagine asking his popular classmates for blood, only to be immediately labeled a total creep. Sighing, he decides to shelf the parenting plan for another day, closing his laptop to finally get some much-needed sleep. Few days later, the scene shifts to the refreshing mountain air, where a cheerful female cadet welcomes everyone, gathering the nervous newcomers for their first official meeting since orientation. While she proudly outlines their noble mission of hunting dangerous beasts to protect the public, Hajin recalls how this hunting trip originally served as a tragic plot device to severely injure Ki Naeun. But the timeline has clearly shifted, as Sven is already using demonic power without completely losing his mind. Hajin wishes he could put the threat down right here, but he is still far too weak to face him head-on. Naeun catches him watching from afar, wondering if our wolf-eyed shooter is constantly glancing in her direction. Another cadet quickly taps her shoulder, warning her to be careful because of that guy, specifically pointing out the recent string of mysterious disappearances around the area. Naeun quietly defends him, insisting he is not the type of person to commit such crimes, while Hajin stands perfectly still in the distance with a grim, serious expression. Deep in the quiet forest, a helpless deer grazes peacefully in a small clearing, only to be instantly vaporized by a cruel blast of dark magical energy. Naeun follows the noise and happily calls out to brag about winning their hunting wager, but she freezes in utter disbelief at the massive pile of slaughtered animals surrounding Sven. Sven calmly claims his victory, asking what she intends to grant him for winning the bet. She blushes, stammering in awkward hesitation, while Sven's face flushes with a sudden, deeply unsettling look of intense desire. He has secretly contracted with Asmodeus, the demon of lust, meaning his amplified dark urges make patience completely impossible. Sven takes a step closer and demands, "Go out with me." Naeun stands frozen, her face a mask of absolute shock and confusion, while Sven immediately starts backtracking, asking if she could ever accept a sudden confession from a classmate. Unbeknownst to them, Hajin is crouched low in the dense bushes just behind them, waiting with bated breath for the demonic human to expose his true, monstrous nature. Naeun cuts him off and bluntly states, "I only like guys who are stronger than me." Sven speaks with an ominous, low tone as she begins to walk away, asking if that means she will like him once he proves his strength. Sven snarls, "You'll come to like me if I'm stronger than you, right?" as he summons a terrifying vortex of dark magic, unleashing a destructive blast of dark energy directly at her. A massive wall of writhing, pitch-black tentacles erupts from his body, leaving Sven looking like a complete monster as the demonic aura flares. But before the dark magic can touch her, Hajin dives in to manifest a brilliant golden shield of protection. He yells to check if she is all right, but the distraction leaves him completely vulnerable. Nayeon watches in panic as her combat equipment is heavily damaged by the shockwave, and before she can react, the shadowy tentacles wrap tightly around Hajin, lifting him into the air as he gasps for breath. He screams for the monster to let him go, charging forward as she looks up at the towering, red-eyed shadow of a demon. She grits her teeth in furious determination, preparing to strike with all her might. Hajin struggles desperately against the crushing grip, suspended high above the ground as the dark energy squeezes his chest. The tragedy of this world is that so many geniuses fail to reach their full potential simply because they chose a weapon that does not fit them. But as Nayeon finally summons a colossal, glowing golden broadsword, Hajin can only smirk through the pain. Wielding her true calling, she roars, "Let him go, you son of a bitch!" sending Hajin into a cold sweat as he witnesses her staggering power. The giant golden blade slams directly into the demon's glowing red eyes, shattering the dark magic and sending a weird purple pig-like creature crashing to the ground. High above the clearing, our hot-tempered archer stands shivering at the edge of a rocky cliff, reaching out into the empty air as the overwhelming shock of her own power finally sets in, leaving her to ask our gun-toting author if she just summoned a literal lightsaber. Hajin gently touches his neck to check for injuries before asking if she is all right, which prompts Ki Nayeon to offer a weak, sweat-drenched smile that looks completely unconvincing, allowing our wolf-like marksman to finally let out a massive sigh of relief, only for his relief to vanish instantly when she collapses onto the dirt. She lies there with her eyes completely glazed over, waking up only when she feels herself hoisted onto his back, instantly protesting and screaming at him to let her down as he carries her down the dark mountain trail. He teasingly threatens to drop her right on the concrete, finally setting her down gently onto the flat pavement of the park, where she immediately looks down in absolute confusion, realizing that her legs are completely numb and refusing to cooperate. Hajin looks down with a calm, analytical expression and asks if this is her first time experiencing magic power exhaustion, a question that makes her eyes widen with sheer embarrassment, forcing her to defensively snap that she already knows what it is as he explains the dangerous condition. With no other choice, he hoists her back onto his shoulders and walks through the quiet park, asking her outright if she intends to keep wasting her talent on a bow when she was clearly built for something else. He listens in stunned silence as our laptop-toting cadet delivers the hard truth, knowing that her magic power is designed to manifest a supreme, glowing broadsword, a weapon capable of tearing through entire hordes of demonic humans with a single slash, leaving Ki Nayeon to grit her teeth in bitter frustration, before she angrily demands to know who the hell he thinks he is to judge her. But as the dim streetlights of the academy grounds guide their path, Hajin dumps her onto a nearby bench and tells her she is on her own from here, walking away without a backward glance to beat the looming dorm curfew. By morning, the entire campus is a hornet's nest of frantic rumors about Sven's sudden demonic transformation. But our gun-toting author ignores the gossip and heads straight to room 303, peeking through the door only to find a surprise gathering waiting inside, as Kim Suho steps forward to welcome him into the room. Sitting in the corner is our sharp-eyed heiress Yoo Yonha, flanked by the arrogant Shin Jong-hak, while Lee Yong-hun watches the tense atmosphere unfold. Hajin realizes that every major powerhouse of the original story is gathered in one place, and before he can even sit at his desk, Suho asks for his personal help, revealing that Cube has quietly entrusted them with investigating the recent wave of student disappearances. Quick flashback shows Suho remembering his conversation with Ki Nayeon, who surprisingly was the one who recommended Hajin for the job, a detail that shocks him, though he quickly agrees to join for the precious story points. Gathering the group in the spacious training hall, Suho takes charge, slamming his boot down to state his theory that Sven was not the main culprit, which immediately triggers Shin Jong-hak's massive jealousy, glaring at the mere mention of Ki Nayeon's first name, while Suho ignores the silent hostility, explaining that another demonic human from the same contract will inevitably target her next. As Suho asks if anyone has noticed anyone acting strangely, Hajin keeps quiet, knowing exactly who the true culprit is but hesitating to change the plot too quickly, until he remembers her tearful gratitude, realizing he cannot let his characters suffer just to keep his original novel on track. Making up his mind, our wolf-like marksman raises his hand and flatly accuses Yoon Hyun, the seemingly innocent leader of the academics club. The accusation hangs heavy in the quiet training room, but Suho immediately points out that the club leader has an airtight alibi during the times of the attacks, while Jong-hak scoffs at the idea that mental magic could lure elite cadets away so easily. Hajin retorts that standard magic rules do not apply to demonic curses, only for the conversation to take a sharp, dangerous turn, as Yoo Yonha narrows her eyes and calmly suggests that Hajin himself is the most suspicious person in the room, leaving our laptop-toting cadet completely speechless. The cold, unwavering focus. Our gun-toting author takes aim with his weapon, his silver desert eagle gleaming under the training hall lights as he prepares to defend his name. While far away in the digital expanse of the system, a mysterious hooded figure monitors the flow of data, remembering the quiet nights Hajin spent typing at his laptop to create the perfect supporter, smiling to himself as he drafted the wealthy, snack-loving heiress Yu Yonha. But back in the harsh reality of the training room, the tension spikes, as our laptop-toting cadet is suddenly accused of being a demon-worshipping traitor. Suho quickly interjects, explaining that Hajin has a recorded alibi from the school portals, but Yonha dismissed it entirely, claiming digital logs are far too easy to forge compared to Yoon Hyun's alibi. Hajin starts to argue back in utter disbelief, only for the aggressive, red-haired martial artist Kim Horak to crack his knuckles and suggest a brutal beating first, looming over the seated author like an impending natural disaster, his face twisted into a smug, condescending sneer. Horak laughs mockingly and threatens to break our extra-turned hero's back, prompting Hajin to stare him dead in the eyes and promise to put a bullet straight through his forehead. Suho quickly steps in to break up the escalating brawl before blood can be spilled, allowing Hajin to coldly suggest they ask Ki Naeun herself what happened on the mountain, which triggers a sudden, violent reaction from the sidelines, as a heavy basketball comes hurtling past the bleachers, where the golden-eyed heir Shin Jong-hak glares down in absolute fury at the mention of his childhood crush. Hajin fires back, asking if Jong-hak was too busy playing childish high school games with his lackeys to hear the actual battle report, which nearly sends the arrogant heir over the edge until his companions desperately hold him back. Disgusted by the schoolyard politics, Hajin turns his back, which Horak interprets as a cowardly escape, watching as our wolf-like marksman walks calmly toward the double doors, until Horak's shoe blurs through the air with a sudden, explosive kick. The heavy punch that follows is meant to crush him, shattering the reinforced door and leaving a gaping hole in the wall, as the surrounding cadets watch the sudden destruction in complete horror. Yet Horak freezes in genuine shock when he realizes his fist met only empty air, as our gun-toting author draws his massive pistol with a deadly grin, sidestepping the brute's next frantic lunge with effortless grace, right before a brilliant blue blade of magical energy cuts between them. Suho stands tall in the center of the dust, his drawn sword glowing with intense light, as he barks a stern order for Horak to back down immediately. Hajin glares past the blade to tell Yonha to check her messages before throwing any more baseless accusations, prompting our sharp-eyed heiress to hesitate and glance down at her wrist device, only to find an angry, caps-lock rant from Ki Naeun defending Hajin and calling her an absolute idiot. Heavy, embarrassed silence falls over the remaining elite cadets, leaving Hajin to walk down the concrete steps of the training grounds entirely alone, until the crushing weight of his reality finally hits him and he drops to his knees on the grass, clutching his head in deep, agonizing distress as he questions his entire existence. He is not just a cadet. He is the creator of this world, now forced to survive against his own beloved creations, feeling a deep, hollow exhaustion settle into his bones as he curls up in the cold darkness. Memories of his real family and his cozy apartment flood his mind, making him wonder if they are currently mourning him, or if his parents are frantically searching for their missing son in a world that feels a lifetime away, leaving him to wonder if he will ever find a way back home. Forces a wry, self-deprecating smile to break the melancholy, clenching his fist tight as he resolves to stop wallowing in self-pity, standing tall under the quiet moonlight of the empty courtyard, fully embracing the solitary path he must walk to survive. Behind him, the training gym remains quiet as the elite cadets slowly disperse, wondering where the strange, untouchable sharpshooter has gone. Yonha breaks the quiet by asking Horak if he truly used his full martial gift in that exchange, mocking her companions because a low-ranked gun user effortlessly dodged an elite martial artist's strike. Before they can argue, her wrist device buzzes with a high-priority alert, bringing up a floating hologram message from an anonymous source, which she quickly accepts, agreeing to a secret meeting that could change everything. Deep within the shadows, a hooded figure with glowing eyes coordinates the next move. CH026P016, as a mysterious gentleman in a tailored suit tips his hat from the darkness of a hidden room, where several shadowy silhouettes gather to discuss their hidden plans, whispering about the chess pieces now moving across the academy board, and the hidden players pulling the strings of the demonic conspiracy. In another corner of the campus, a pale-haired cadet looks up in absolute shock, staring in confusion at a small, unexpected companion standing before them, as the dark night hides the secret connections forming right under Cube's nose. While our weary writer tries to keep his mind occupied to chase away his creeping melancholy, he finds himself resting his head on his hand in the classroom, watching the righteous Kim Suho trying to comfort an incredibly prickly Ki Naeun, who grumbles that she is perfectly fine, flashing a bright smile while leaning heavily on her crutch, even as she stubbornly refuses Suho's outstretched hand to move on her own, leaving a heavy silence as her eyes briefly wander back toward our isolated protagonist. Peaceful classroom atmosphere vanishes when instructor Kim Soo-hyuk announces that midterms are less than a week away, which includes facing off against terrifying phantom beasts summoned by the magic department, forcing every cadet to redouble their training efforts. though our rookie rifleman is much more concerned about the upcoming student duels, where everyone receives 3 nomination tickets to challenge anyone they want. While the system is technically designed for fair competition, arrogant elites like Shin Jonghak will undoubtedly use them to brutally beat down anyone they happen to dislike. Hajin has a much more immediate and perplexing problem on his mind, specifically the elegant Princess Rachel, who has been silently hovering around him lately, watching his every move with wide, curious eyes, until she leans in to sneak a peek at his notebook, where he has been mindlessly scribbling a pair of familiar names, prompting him to gently explain with a sad smile that those belong to his parents. Meanwhile, the sharp-minded Yu Yonha receives a high-priority message on her smartwatch, prompting her to slip away into the quiet corridors of the academy, where she cautiously opens a door to find a handsome second-year senior named Yoon Hyun standing inside a room filled with roses. He welcomes her warmly and invites her to take a seat, lighting a sweet, scented candle that he claims is meant to help her focus, before casually mentioning that they are now teammates on the specialized demonic human search team. As they discuss their lack of progress on the investigation, the heavy scent of the candle begins to cloud her thoughts, tapping into her deepest memories of a recent confrontation with Hajin, where she had confidently accused him of being the demonic spy because her mind was strangely at peace around him, only for Hajin to scoff and ask if she had any concrete evidence of such a claim. His unusual defensive reaction had immediately raised her suspicions, especially when he frantically tried to backpedal and claim he merely misspoke, leaving her to stare at him with a cold, piercing gaze, declaring that truly innocent people never immediately ask about evidence, before she unleashed her whip in a flash of violent fury, ready to force the truth out of him right then and there. But in her memory, Hajin merely smirked at her efforts, towering over her as she found herself completely trapped in her own mind. Now the scene abruptly cuts to the dark second-year dorms late at night, where Yonha slowly blinks through a heavy, drug-induced haze, only to gasp as she realizes she is completely immobilized, with a classical record player spinning softly in the background of the quiet room, illuminating her bound figure under the harsh morning light. Panic surges through her as she realizes she is trapped inside Yoon Hyun's private quarters, unveiling the horrifying truth that her polite senior is indeed the demonic human behind the recent student disappearances, and that Hajin's frantic warning about psychological magic was the absolute truth. Forcing herself to breathe through her terror, she desperately tries to form a plan to contact anyone who can save her, quietly twisting her wrists against the coarse ropes binding her hands, her eyes burning with sheer determination as she bites her lip to keep from crying out, silently praying for a miracle as she struggles to activate her communication device, completely unaware of the shadow lengthening behind her chair, until Yoon Hyun leans down with a sickening, wide grin to whisper in her ear. A moment later, our wolf-eyed cadet is jolted awake by his buzzing phone, staring in utter bewilderment at a bizarre, nonsensical message, which comes directly from the missing heiress herself, while a mysterious, smiling, masked figure tips their hat in the dark. While coarse ropes are tied tightly around a wooden chair to secure the captive, the sadistic Yoon Hyun taunts the bound heiress about her pathetic attempt to send a gibberish text in the middle of the night, smiling sinisterly at his holographic device as he decides that he will have to eliminate Hajin next, even as Yonha fiercely struggles against her bindings and yells that the search team is already closing in. He simply smirks at her defiant expression, revealing that they are acting under the orders of a mysterious entity known as Lady Lilith. Meanwhile, back in his dorm, our gun-toting author stares at his glowing smartwatch in deep confusion, wondering if the sudden midnight message from Yonha was sent by mistake, until his eyes narrow on the letters spelling out a desperate cry for help, prompting him to leap out of bed and summon the mystical Book of Truth to track her exact location, as a brilliant aura of golden light floods the room from the ancient pages. Back in the dim hideout, Yonha remains hopelessly bound in the center of the cold room, her head bowed in physical and emotional exhaustion as Yoon Hyun slowly walks up to her, mocking her isolation and insisting that he understands her pain. Praises her incredible willpower for resisting his brainwashing spell for so long, gently tilting her chin up to whisper that she has nothing left to fear, ignoring her desperate struggles as she turns her face away in disgust, before he begins to channel a surge of dark, demonic magic, which is violently interrupted when a high-caliber bullet pierces the window and slams directly into his shoulder. Senior screams in absolute agony, collapsing onto the floor in a pool of his own blood, as a familiar voice crackles through Yonha's communication device, mocking the traitor's arrogance, which only sends Yoon Hyun into a blind, bleeding rage as he screams to know who is attacking him. The voice calmly warns him that the bullet was specially designed to prevent his wound from healing, prompting the demonic human to desperately charge his hands with crackling crimson energy, only to be instantly blasted back by another precise, magical projectile. Yonha can only flinch from the massive shockwaves tearing through the room, watching her captor get repeatedly hammered across the concrete floor, completely unable to locate his invisible assailant. While miles away, our wolf-like marksman calmly squeezes his rifle's trigger from the cover of the dense woods. Each subsequent shot hits with devastating force, systematically dismantling the traitor's defenses until he collapses in a heap. Peering through his scope from his hidden nest in the dark bushes, our dark-haired marksman smiles at how easy it is to dominate a fight from a distance, casually reminding Yonha over the comms that he is using up all the expensive ammunition she gifted him, and expecting a much better replacement once she gets out of this alive, even as Yoon Hyun desperately struggles to push himself off the blood-stained floor. With absolute focus, he tracks the traitor's frantic movements, waiting for the exact moment the demonic human stops moving, his finger slowly tightening on the trigger one final time before he releases a deep breath as the final gunshot echoes through the night. Slumped on the floor in her bindings, a weary but deeply relieved Yonha whispers her gratitude, closing her eyes with a faint smile as she finally feels safe. The ponytailed Spitfire slowly opens her eyes in a quiet hospital bed, looking up in complete confusion, before sitting up with a sudden start as a familiar voice calls out. Sitting right next to her is the righteous swordsman, who calmly peels an apple while checking to make sure she is not hurting anywhere, though Ki Naeun immediately demands to know why he is even here. Kim Suho explains that their entire team has been taking turns looking after her, just as a heavy boot steps into the doorway to reveal the silver-haired elitist standing in the corridor with a rare look of guilt on his face. Jin Jonghak offers a quiet, sincere apology for failing to protect their teammate, which leaves her completely speechless, until Suho breaks the awkward silence by teasing her about her stubborn reputation. He holds out a sweet slice of apple, which suddenly triggers a lingering memory of her mysterious savior, and leaves the young girl arguing with her own thoughts as she turns her face away, completely flustered. Meanwhile, our laptop-toting cadet is staring at his screen in absolute shock, the massive SB payout he just received, as our gun-toting author realizes that saving a major heroine was worth every single point he invested. His thoughts are interrupted when a familiar voice calls out, revealing his broker, who has rushed over in a panic, bowing deeply while begging him not to cancel their contract. Kim Hajin simply smiles and slides over a heavy briefcase, announcing his intention to invest heavily in SH Entertainment. Thanks to his high-grade ginseng, fetching a massive 400 million won, our wolf-like marksman splits his funds between the entertainment agency and the Packhorse Masters Guild. The broker can barely believe the sudden windfall, stuttering in pure shock at the sheer volume of cash being handed over. But our former writer tells him to take it so they can both grow bigger together. Upon learning that his broker is only 29 years old, the two agree to drop the formalities and speak casually, before taking a quick detour to a nearby convenience store. Hajin immediately starts scratching off a lottery ticket, using his absurdly high luck stat to secure a massive winning ticket that leaves his broker smiling with wide eyes. Our laptop-toting cadet hands over the winning slip, casually noting that it should bring in about 2 billion won, leaving his agent trembling in absolute disbelief. Deep within a desolate, decaying warehouse, a powerful figure stands wrapped in a menacing dark aura. A subordinate reports that their targets have finally started moving, and the dark-haired captain quietly orders them to grab the item and leave the rest. The shadowy henchman then brings up a strange anomaly, pointing out a mystery investor buying up massive stock, and projects a glowing golden emblem of the target guild. He then points out a few highly interesting new forums on the Violet Banquet network, revealing a mysterious database known as the Truth Agency. Boss considers the strange agency, wondering if they might actually be able to help her find the person she is searching for, though her subordinate quickly brushes it off as a joke. She then turns her thoughts to Cube's upcoming midterm exams, where several dangerous members of her troop are already planning to infiltrate the campus. Standing tall in the dark, the powerful commander walks forward with absolute confidence, hoping that the upcoming exams will bring a bit of excitement to her boring routine, while a sad, strange little creature rests on the ground, completely unaware of the incoming storm. Our gun-toting author stands focused and ready, raising his black handgun as he prepares himself for the intense challenges ahead. With dangerous enemies lurking in the shadows of the digital interface, our wolf-like marksman knows he must stay one step ahead of the original plot. Massive, glowing holographic welcome sign floats high in the air to mark the official start of Cube Academy's highly anticipated midterm practical exams. Excited children run through the gates to greet their families, leaping into the warm embraces of cadets who have been training all semester. As a high-tech surveillance drone floats over the massive, cheering crowds, reporters enthusiastically broadcast live, surrounded by elite scouts hunting for the next top-tier heroes. Monitoring the active frequency with a controller in hand, Kim Hajin keeps a watchful eye on the perimeter, searching for any early signs of trouble. He looks up to watch his hidden network of drones sweeping the blue sky, when a passerby suddenly bumps right into him. He quickly turns to offer a polite apology, but freezes the instant he sees the face of the woman standing before him. Our laptop-toting cadet is utterly paralyzed by her striking presence, staring directly at the beautiful, dark-haired stranger. The silence between them grows incredibly awkward, and our former writer immediately panics, realizing he has locked eyes with her for far too long. Trying desperately not to look suspicious, he is completely mesmerized by her dark, swirling aura, leaving him scratching his chin in absolute bewilderment as he hastily looks away to avoid her sharp gaze. He watches her blend back into the dense crowd, unaware that she is actually the lethal leader of the chameleon troop. Furious that a mere cadet easily saw through her perception-blocking necklace, Boss quietly orders her team to investigate the mysterious boy, while Hajin continues his walk, fully aware that dangerous criminals are infiltrating the academy. A white-haired assassin watches the top-ranked cadets with a silent, menacing stare. Our gun-toting author keeps his guard up, while nearby, a pair of patrolling pro-heroes scan the grounds. The cocky male veteran boasts that he does not see a single threat, prompting his glasses-wearing partner to scold him for taking their security duty so lightly. He dismisses her worries with a confident grin, suggesting they go grab some pizza instead of worrying about intruders. Meanwhile, a hidden troop member smiles in amusement, realizing someone actually saw through Boss's disguise, as another operative wanders through the crowds, completely bored by the weaklings surrounding them. An annoyed, light-haired thug on his phone eagerly suggests picking a fight with Hajin to test his limits, but his superior commands him to stay put and observe the upcoming combat. Outside the towering gates of the grand arena, our wolf-like marksman is startled when a soft voice calls out to him from behind, revealing the sharp chaebol heiress standing in the corridor. The two walk together through the quiet hallway, and Yu Yonha hands over a piece of high-grade equipment for his exam, insisting that a simple gift could never fully repay him for saving her life. Hajin looks at the device with a quiet sigh, reminding her that things will get dangerously complicated if anyone discovers he was the sniper who took down the traitor. Yonha smiles as she walks ahead, teasing him about hiding his true, monstrous strength, before asking if he even knows who he is about to face in the ring. Inside the prep room, a furious, sweating cadet clenches his fist, vowing to completely humiliate and crush Kim Hajin before the entire academy. Our gun-toting author keeps his focus sharp, peering down the barrel of his Desert Eagle, unaware that a hooded figure is currently digging through his files on a digital terminal. The hacker notes that the boy is a parentless orphanage kid who somehow landed a spot at the academy despite a massive debt, which leaves Boss completely baffled as she stares at his face on the screen. She cannot understand how a low-ranked nobody saw right through her perception-blocking artifact, just as Chiak Yungyong emerges from the bushes with a lazy grin. He smiles warmly, greeting his captain as if they were old friends, though Boss immediately scolds him for being late. Chiak complains that the cadets around here are all weaklings he could destroy with a single flick, but Boss wants to know if any of them left a real impression on him. He suggests checking out the first-year duel featuring a guy named Kim Hajin, which immediately sparks her curiosity as she remembers the boy who saw through her trick. Meanwhile, a spectator happily stuffs a slice of pizza into their mouth, watching the arena alongside friends who are busy teasing each other over old sparring losses. Yu Yonha analyzes the upcoming match with her usual sharp gaze, while our wolf-like marksman sits alone in the stands, smiling over at her group with a quiet confidence. But the peaceful prep time is officially over as the match is announced, prompting the physical powerhouse, Kim Horak, to step onto the arena sands. Our tactical writer stands opposite him, gripping his pistol tight as the wide stadium lights illuminate their vastly different weapons. Hajin offers a relaxed grin, suggesting they take things easy, but Horak only responds with a ferocious, bloodthirsty glare before wrapping his entire body in a massive shroud of glowing magic energy. Hajin clenches his fist to steel his nerves, right before the juggernaut charges forward like a runaway train, shattering the concrete floor. A massive aura-coated fist comes flying straight at his face, forcing our author's eye to twitch as time begins to crawl. He instantly triggers bullet time to slow the world down, watching his internal timer stretch each precious second into a minute. The sheer force of the wind still sends him flying backward like a stone skipped across water, but Horak's glowing eyes lock onto him with relentless fury. The brute leaps high into the air to crush him, forcing Hajin to scramble across the sand to buy himself an opening. He raises his handgun to find his mark, and fires a glowing round straight into his opponent's chest. Horak sneers, confident that his enhanced protection energy can easily shrug off a tiny bullet, and tries to swat the projectile away with a casual swipe of his hand. But the heavy bullet punches clean through his magic shield like hot iron through butter, leaving the brawler sweating in absolute shock. The crowd gasps in disbelief from the stands, unable to comprehend how a standard training round just shattered an advanced defense. Horak stares down at his bleeding hand, trying to understand what kind of monster he is facing, while Hajin stands ready, refusing to let the giant recover. The giant is forced to crouch low under the pressure, as the marksman calmly remarks that deflecting these shots is a truly unfortunate expectation. He unleashes another precise burst from his Desert Eagle, leaving the spectators watching in stunned silence. Horak screams in absolute fury and charges forward with both fists clenched, determined to end this embarrassment. But Hajin is already airborne, leaping high over the charge, and yells a warning about a flying knife coming straight down. CH-031P015. The blade embeds itself into the concrete with a thud, leaving his opponent staring at the weapon with the wide-eyed shock of a cartoon pig. Gun-toting author raises his pistol once more, taking absolute control of the battlefield with his cold, calculating gaze. He keeps his steady stance under the intense pressure of the match, while Kim Suho watches the duel intently, recognizing the ridiculous skill on display. Soft trail of smoke rises from the hot muzzle of Hajin's weapon, leaving his massive opponent slumped on the arena floor in complete exhaustion. The spectators look down in utter shock at the sudden lull, whispering among themselves about whether the marksman has finally run out of bullets. Hajin stands calmly amidst the dust, staring down the gasping giant, before a subtle, playful smile creeps onto his face. He cheerfully raises both hands and yells, "I surrender!" sending his furious opponent into an absolute spiral of rage. The cartoonish panic of the crowd matches the disbelief of the announcers as the system officially declares the end of the duel, leaving the exhausted brawler to glare helplessly at the scoreboard while Hajin casually walks away, ignoring the enraged screams to get back and fight. As the bruised fighter is wheeled off by medical staff, the audience is already buzzing with theories about the crazy match. Yu Yonha sits in the stands, dryly noting that Kim Hajin did well, Kim Horak was premature, explaining to her peers that the brawler was simply too impatient with his expensive magic defense. He finds herself completely fascinated by Hajin's impossible speed and visual acuity, wondering if he possesses a physical enhancement gift that allowed him to fuse his bullets with pure mana. The cadet beside her is dumbfounded by the idea that a standard gun could shatter such high-level protection, while she continues to ponder the true nature of his mysterious gift. Scouts in the stands are already frantically calling their guild presidents, while Chiak Yungyong scowls skeptically in the park, as a suited colleague points out that the marksman has the rare power of demon slaying. Boss sits nearby in her white-haired disguise, monitoring the data on her holographic screens, while Chiak rants about how a real duel requires fatal effort and murderous intent to pierce the heart. The giant brute dismisses the marksman, pointing out the impressive performances of Kim Suho and Shin Jonghak instead. He recalls Jonghak's devastating style of immediately aiming for a target's vitals, and notes that Suho's swordplay was equally unique. The original protagonist moves with a beautiful, fluid sword dance, standing tall with his blade drawn in the arena, though Chiak watches him closely from a distance, sensing that the young sword saint is hiding his true colors. Chiak admits that neither of them are quite ready to fight him yet, but grumbles when Boss insists on prioritizing Hajin anyway. Lonely security guard stumbles into their off-limits forest clearing, prompting Chiak to scowl in irritation at the pesky fly. He walks away to avoid the hassle, but a heavy hand reaches out from the shadows to paint the forest floor with a sudden splash of crimson. A suited companion looks down at the broken guard with a sigh, while elsewhere, a young girl stands on a high balcony overlooking the city. She stares into the pouring rain in front of a cold monument, crying as she vows to find the traitor and get her revenge. She grips her weapon's hilt with white-knuckled fury, as Boss stands on her own high balcony, looking out over the glowing horizon. He calls her operative, Droon, ordering him to check the top cadets, but to make Kim Hajin the highest priority. Our clever creator adjusts his collar in the quiet night, making his own plans to meet his target face-to-face tomorrow. Cube Academy's second day of midterms begins with high expectations, as professional scouts gather to spot the next generation of powerhouse heroes. The packed stadium buzzes with intense energy, with the massive displays showing the top-ranked matchup between Kim Suho and Yo-Hai, followed by the Princess Rachel against Ki Naeun, leaving the audience absolutely thrilled for the upcoming clash. Our sharp-eyed author watches from the stands with a quiet smirk, knowing Ki Naeun is destined to lose this fight because she refuses to give up her bow. The announcer signals the start of the heavy-hitter 8th match, and Ki Naeun mockingly challenges Princess Rachel to swap ranks. She launches a bright, magical arrow into the sky, raining down glowing light across the battlefield, which Rachel fluidly sidesteps. Naeun fiercely parries the counter-barrage, looking up in sudden surprise as a massive shockwave forces her to defend with her bow, completely catching her off guard. While the crowd cheers wildly for the high-level battle, and the stadium roars with excitement, someone is watching quietly from the upper stands. Sitting right next to our gun-toting cadet is Yibayol, the terrifying leader of the chameleon troop, who suddenly gets doused in a cold drink by a careless spectator. Our sleep-deprived extra panics internally as he helps clean the mess, sweating bullets because he knows exactly how deadly she is, and hands her a handkerchief before she can pulverize the stadium. Yibayol thanks him quietly, revealing that she watched his clever duel with Kim Horak before sliding him a fake hero business card. The card reads Desolate Moon, and our sharp-eyed author warns her that recruiting cadets early is highly illegal, though he secretly slips the card into his pocket. Meanwhile, Kim Suho dominates his own duel in the background, and as Yibayol departs with a simple farewell, a wooden sword flies through the air, leaving the original protagonist standing victorious. Later, our gun-toting cadet retrieves his surveillance drone to check for clues, carrying it back toward the dorms, when he hears a faint, painful sob and spots Ki Naeun crying her eyes out beneath a tree. Our sleep-deprived extra recognizes this pivotal moment, watching Kim Suho try to console her with empty promises of hard work. He knows those meaningless words will never heal her wounded pride, but Suho is a righteous hero who simply cannot comprehend giving up, which only makes Naeun stubbornly cling to her wrong weapon. Realizing he has to intervene for her own sake, he triggers an anonymous text on her smart watch, making her frown in sudden irritation as she reads the glowing holographic screen. The text bluntly tells her that she belongs with a sword, not a bow, leaving her completely dumbfounded and speechless. When Suho and his friends finally track her down to help her, Suho smiles warmly, asking where she went. But her face is already twisted in pure, blinding rage as she screams a furious death threat to the anonymous critic who ruined her night. Our gun-toting cadet focuses his aim, gripping his handgun with absolute intensity. He knows that danger lurks in the shadows of this world, as a mysterious man in a suit confronts an unsuspecting cadet, brutally ending his life in a single movement. Monitoring these dark events on his glowing laptop, our sleep-deprived extra feels a chill down his spine at the cold-blooded nature of the chameleon troupe, whose sharp-toothed grins represent the terrifying rise of new villains. Our sharp-eyed author realizes he cannot simply rely on his original plot, especially as Jin Juhwa, the supervising mage, gathers the cadets inside the empty, grid-lined monster training arena. She warns them that these summoned beasts have highly lethal tendencies and instructs them to surrender immediately if they are overwhelmed. With the final instructions delivered to the students, the first team is called to their starting positions, while the rest are told to observe quietly and analyze their classmates' combat strategies. Our gun-toting cadet studies his digital interface carefully as the supervising mage waits to begin, clearing her throat to address the room. Every student is ordered to turn off their smart watch before preparing to write detailed analytical reports on the battles. She initiates the test, casting a massive summoning spell that causes the magic circle to glow intensely on the floor. An advanced ghoul materializes to face the first challenger, igniting a fast-paced clash of weapons while the rest of the class watches and takes notes. Moments later, a giant snake monster hisses fiercely, met by a student screaming as they unleash their magic, blasting the beast with a wave of energy that erupts in a blinding flash of light, sending a nearby unicorn monster reeling in pain. Even Ki Naeun draws her bow to display her skills, while other cadets maneuver swiftly with short swords, right before a fresh magic circle appears on the wall to summon a ferocious Crom wolf for our sleep-deprived extra's turn. Our sharp-eyed author fires his handgun with absolute precision, instinctively ducking behind a stone slab as the beast lunges. He fully expects the exam to end without any further issues, but a sudden glance backward reveals the other cadets looking confused as a panicked static crackles through his earpiece. Kim Suho listens intently to the transmission with a concerned expression, while the guards are told to focus on standing watch. Senior officer warns that a security trooper was found dead yesterday, and a mysterious tremor has been detected near the outer borders. Signed to the coastal patrol, our gun-toting cadet stands on the sandy beach when a heavy boot suddenly steps into the thick brush. A muscular man with a goatee peers down with a curious grin, revealing his presence in the dense jungle. He confronts our cadet on the shore, warning that the area is strictly out of bounds. But our sharp-eyed author stands his ground, declaring that he is no outsider. The intruder grips his arm threateningly, telling him to get lost or get beaten, prompting Hajin to draw his sword to prepare for an immediate clash. The two figures face off in a tense standoff on the sand, but their battle is interrupted as a dark whirlwind forms over the water. A massive spiraling tornado rises high into the sky, shaking the entire environment with unnatural force. Back at the academy, an evacuation alert blares through the speakers, forcing the instructors to order the immediate stoppage of the exams, which leaves the cadets feeling deeply frustrated. But as everyone flees, Kim Suho strides confidently forward, ready to face the storm. We find our gun-toting author crouching in the shadows, while a summoned spirit wolf stands alert above him. Kim Hajin clutches his handgun in confusion, wondering why these exam monsters are still active instead of being canceled. He shouts upward into the empty concrete chambers, desperate to find any instructors or staff. Realizing no one is coming, our wolf-like marksman suspects that a traitorous mage must have bypassed the academy's security. He reviews the original plot in his mind, confirming that the story remains unaltered because no system alert has popped up yet. Suddenly, his sharp eyes catch a faint movement, forcing him to peer through the dusty ruins as a heavy silence fills the corridors. The dark boot steps heavily onto the cracked stone as a cloaked figure corners the British princess, greeting her with a cold, familiar voice. Rachel stares at the intruder in utter disbelief, murmuring the name of Sir Lancaster. She demands to know where the former guard captain has been hiding since the tragic London incident 5 years ago. But the fallen knight only offers a bitter, downcast profile before his single eye ignites with a sinister red glow. Rachel recoils in horror, asking why an honorable imperial guard would ever betray his country, only for him to declare that he merely found a new lord. Lancaster insists his soul was betrayed by the very kingdom he swore to protect, leaving him no choice. A sharp metallic ring echoes as a sword slides from its sheath, and the elegant princess draws her rapier, promising to bring her old mentor to justice. With a deafening crack of steel, she leaps forward like a diving swallow, but Lancaster casually sweeps his blade to parry her desperate thrust. Rachel's eyes widen as her perfect strike is deflected like a mere toy, while Lancaster's crimson gaze locks onto her through the sparks of their clashing weapons. He mockingly explains that his arrival is nothing more than a cruel game, warning her that the rampaging Imugi outside has thrown the entire facility into absolute pandemonium. He asks if this abandonment reminds her of the selfish British crown, which ignores the dying masses to protect its own royal blood. Dark, blood-splattered memory flashes through Rachel's mind, recalling the grim slaughter she could not prevent. Lancaster bids her a mocking farewell and steps backward, while she cries out for him to stay. He vanishes into a swirling vortex of dark energy, leaving behind a dual-blade assassin to finish the job. Rachel steadies her breathing as the new threat lunges forward, unleashing a heavy wave of dark energy that crashes against her guard. She gasps in agony as her wrists buckle under the weight of the dark blade, while the assassin strikes again with a fury that sends brilliant sparks flying. The blade bites deep into her shoulder, spilling blood across the cold stone floor in a violent crimson spray. An explosion of light erupts as they clash once more, forcing Rachel to raise a desperate, trembling hand to protect her face. The relentless assassin cuts through her defenses with ease, looming over her battered and bleeding form as she collapses onto the rubble. Summoning the last of her strength, her hand begins to glow with elemental light as she calls her trusty rapier back to her side. But as the killer strikes to deliver the final blow, her blade erupts in a blinding flash, filling the entire chamber with a brilliant, protective radiance. Massive explosion shatters the stone, leaving Rachel to stare through the smoke in utter disbelief, because standing in the center of the newly blasted wall is our extra-turned hero. The assassin glares through the rising dust as a trail of pure white energy crackles in the air. Kim Hajin raises his glowing Desert Eagle, initiating its heavy weapon transformation. Locking his gaze on the target, our laptop-toting cadet switches to shotgun mode and fires a devastating blast of lead that completely swallows the dark assassin. Meanwhile, a weary purple beast rests peacefully in the distance, while a mysterious masked gentleman in a suit watches the shadows, holding a fresh red rose. Standing atop the shattered concrete ledge, our gun-toting author looks down at the battered British princess. He stands in the quiet aftermath, surveying the damage with his weapon lowered. Kim Hajin sighs internally, realizing that single shot was incredibly costly since it drained a massive 250 SP. He looks over the edge at Rachel, who is still catching her breath. She gazes up through the dust, slowly realizing that her mysterious savior is actually one of her classmates. Heavy Boot steps onto the rubble as he climbs down, approaching her with an outstretched hand while asking if she is all right. Our wolf-like marksman immediately digs into his pockets, assuring her that he brought plenty of medical supplies. He begins wrapping her bleeding arm, moving with practiced ease. He gently warns her that if he had arrived any later, she might have permanently lost her ability to hold a sword. Suddenly, his eyes lock onto a glowing crimson stain on the bandage, causing him to freeze as the system confirms he just successfully harvested a high-ranking hero's blood. Rachel softly offers her thanks, but he quickly dismisses her gratitude, brushing it off like a minor errand. He snaps his head up as a bright light shines down from the ceiling, revealing an academy instructor shouting down to see if they are injured. Rachel looks up in relief, while the rescue team reassures them they are on their way. The panicked instructor yells for the medical mages, reporting 2 severely wounded cadets in the inner hall. He stares in disbelief at the sheer scale of the destruction, wondering who could possibly possess such terrifying power. Meanwhile, on a peaceful, sun-drenched beach, a tired hunter sits by the breaking waves. Yu Yonha runs across the sand, shouting for Oh Jun Hyuk. She demands to know if the giant serpent monster showed up, but he lazily explains that the beast was already chased away. Shocked, she asks if he was the one who defeated it, but he reveals that a mysterious intruder did all the heavy lifting. He recalls a vivid memory of the furious Imugi being completely overwhelmed by pure, brutal force. He clenches his fist, admitting that whoever fought the beast is incredibly strong. Yu Yonha scoffs at the absurd story, but he warns her that this powerful intruder is likely the suspect in the police murders. He looks out over the shore, sighing that this massive security breach has completely ruined their midterm exams. The camera pans over the academy's grand campus, where the administration is bracing for a massive public backlash. Within 24 hours, the news of the monster invasion spreads worldwide, forcing the school to postpone all testing. In the classroom, an instructor points to a revised calendar, announcing that classes are officially canceled for the holidays. The entire room erupts into joyous cheering, though one quiet cadet stays completely focused on his work. The angry instructor quickly scolds the noisy students, ordering them to pack up and return to their dorms immediately. Back in his room, our laptop-toting cadet pulls up his screen to review the damage. He spots a new story change notification and curses his mysterious co-author for throwing the plot into chaos. He realizes Lancaster's early appearance is a major threat, since the villain aims to conquer the entire United Kingdom. He laments that he made the bad guys far too strong, wishing he had created a few more powerful heroes to help out. But his mood quickly brightens, as he remembers that he successfully acquired Rachel's rare blood. Suddenly, Ki Naeun bumps into him from behind, breaking his train of thought. She stands over him with an intimidating glare, demanding to know what he is staring at. She sticks her tongue out playfully, trying to provoke him into an argument. Kim Hajin can only look up in absolute defeat, while his classmates tell him to just let it go. Kim Suho watches the exchange with a quiet sigh as Ki Naeun turns on her heel and marches away. She tosses a final dismissive remark over her shoulder, calling him a total loser. Later in her dorm, she pulls out her smart device to check her student evaluations. She sits on her bed and scrolls down to see what her peers wrote about her. She smiles at the glowing feedback, remembering her flawless performance in the exams. She looks at Suho's typed assessment, which praises her incredible potential with a bow and captures her standing proudly in the training fields. Recalling Suho's warm encouragement, she reads his official cadet review with a bright grin. He covers her face in sheer embarrassment, feeling incredibly flattered by his kind words. She happily decides to fully commit to her bow training, but her smile fades when she notices a massive, anonymous review waiting at the bottom of the page. Curious, she leans in closer to see what this mystery writer has to say, only for her face to turn pale as she reads a brutally honest critique of her terrible footwork and reckless form. Her eyes widen in pure, unadulterated fury as a terrifying dark aura erupts from her body. She glares at her bedroom door, screaming that she will never forgive whoever wrote this. Meanwhile, far across the snowy mountains, a beautiful woman with long dark hair stares into the cold. Her profile remains calm and elegant, highlighting her sharp, striking features. He approaches a massive, towering research facility nestled in the frozen wilderness. She walks alone through the drifting snow, marching steadily toward the heavy iron gates. Deep inside the base, a stylish mercenary adjusts his dark sunglasses, winking confidently at his companions. Alongside him stands a masked man in a sharp suit, preparing his weapons for an upcoming raid. Exotic mutant beasts growl from their heavy steel cages, while a bizarre, single-eyed plant monster watches the guards. Nearby, a strange purple creature happily munches on a taco, completely ignoring the chaotic preparations around it. A mercenary offers a wide, wicked grin, while a bearded hunter in a thick fur coat tightens his gear. On the other side of the room, a tough, dark-skinned warrior shrugs, admitting her contract forces her to participate in this dangerous game. Back in his dorm, our gun-toting author watches in absolute awe as the MT, Gari Seed, devours the rare blood he collected, a magical snack that is supposed to birth the infamous witch Evangel. Since he used the pure, saintly blood of Princess Rachel, he is pretty sure the resulting creature will be more of a helpful ally than a terrifying villain. But as soon as his fingers brush against the shell, a sudden flare of magical energy surges through him, leaving a glowing, snowflake-shaped mark seared onto his arm as a second stigma is forced directly into his soul. The intense strain leaves his bandaged leg throbbing with a sharp ache, so when he finally rides out to the field, our wolf-eyed marksman looks completely drained. His driver looks back with genuine worry, though Hajin quickly shrugs it off as simple exhaustion, much preferring to focus on how much easier it is to hunt now that they have a spacious SUV. The driver actually breaks down in tears of gratitude, sobbing that his life turned around completely because of Hajin, which makes our awkward hero quickly beg to change the subject. Their ride suddenly slows as they approach a high metal gate blocked by a massive crowd of spectators, where two sharp-eyed girls stand pointing toward the arriving vehicle, as they recognize the prominent guild members currently marching past the gate. Yu Yonha leads the pack with her signature long black ponytail swaying behind her, but she halts in surprise the moment she spots Hajin watching her from the passenger side. She immediately marches over, leaning down through the window to ask, "What are you doing in the field?" prompting Hajin to stammer that he is just trying to earn some pocket money. His driver turns around with wide, frantic eyes, utterly shell-shocked that his client is casually chatting with the heir to the world's greatest guild. Even Suhyuk looks incredibly nervous as he watches the corporate heiress size them both up, which makes Hajin start to panic about the butterfly effect of his presence. In his original novel, Yonho was supposed to discover Suhyuk through the protagonist Kim Suho, eventually investing massive wealth to turn his agency into a massive corporate success. But since Hajin hired him first, he might have just accidentally ruined the poor man's entire career. Yonha merely offers a quiet hum of contemplation before she confidently pulls the car door wide open. Without asking for permission, the wealthy heiress slides right into the seat next to Hajin, announcing, "If you're here to hunt, then I'll accompany you," completely overriding his personal space. Hajin can only stare in mute panic, resulting in an excruciatingly quiet car ride as the two of them sit side by side in the back. Hoping to break the awkward tension, she suddenly asks if he has given any serious thought to his post-graduation career, pointing out that their busy third-year apprenticeships are approaching faster than they think. With a confident smirk, she offers him a direct invitation to join her elite guild, Essence of the Strait, promising to shower him with high-ranking weapons and legendary artifacts. But our laptop-toting cadet calmly points out that recruiting active cadets carries a massive 5 billion won fine. Yonha dismisses the penalty as pocket change, but before she can press further, a sudden jerk throws her forward as the driver slams on the brakes. She demands to know why they stopped so abruptly, only to look out at a sheer rocky cliff overlooking the dense forest below. This is their destination, a notorious monster spawning point that Suhyuk mapped out using his own impressive survival skills. Yonho is visibly surprised by the agent's competence, but Hajin simply steps out of the SUV, bidding his driver a quick farewell before disappearing into the thick tree line. Left behind in the car, Suhyuk asks what they should do next, prompting the heiress to state that her guild members will arrive shortly to secure the perimeter. But before they can leave, she leans forward with a sharp, calculating gaze, startling the driver as she commands, "Give me your name card," determined to recruit this talented agent before anyone else does. Meanwhile, deep inside the dark forest, Hajin crouches low in the brush, focusing his senses on a dark presence ahead. The air grows heavy as he kneels silently among the damp leaves. Suddenly, a flash of pink hair appears through the trees, a sinister figure bearing a manic grin, while another dark-clad shadow laughs softly beside them. Tall, black-haired warrior stands perfectly still, with a massive, ornate sword strapped tightly to their waist, their long, dark coat rustling in the cold wind. They are surrounded by a swirling vortex of deep red energy, a menacing pink aura radiating from their very core, focused entirely on a brilliant crimson jewel glowing at their center. At the shooting range, our wolf-eyed marksman raises his trusty handgun, his steady gaze locked perfectly onto the distant target. He slowly pulls the trigger, as a flurry of digital data cascades across his laptop screen, showing the mysterious hooded figure of his co-author lurking in the system interface. This cheat code assistance helps him easily secure first place in the written exams, much to the absolute despair of his failing classmates. Walking past a dejected cadet who looks ready to burst into tears, our extra-turned hero stretches with a massive yawn, fully convinced that this holiday break will be the most peaceful vacation he has ever enjoyed. But that fragile peace is instantly shattered when Ki Naeun punches a massive hole into the wall right beside his head, demanding, "Hey, you wrote this report, didn't you?" The hot-tempered archer glares at him with burning rage, holding up his anonymous evaluation report while their classmates whisper in absolute panic. She snaps that she knows his annoying, smug writing style anywhere, refusing to let him weasel out of the brutal critique. Hajin calmly explains that he only wrote the honest feedback to help her, but Naeun fires back that she never asked for his pity, furiously demanding what right he has to look down on her archery skills. She dares him to a serious wager, vowing to make him experience just how punishing a bow is with his entire body. But Hajin simply counters with a devastatingly calm proposal. If he wins, she must quit archery forever. Naeun's eyes widen in sheer shock, her face twisting in pure outrage as she agrees to the bet, completely unaware that Hajin's master sharpshooter gift is already at grade 7, meaning a little more training and his legendary luck stat will make the challenge a total walk in the park. As she storms off, Hajin watches her departure with a calm, steady gaze, knowing that sometimes a harsh truth is the only way to save a stubborn friend. A few days later, Oh Han-hyun gathers their travel club, expressing immense relief that everyone survived the chaotic monster invasion during the midterms. But while the Academy suspends official hunting missions, the global plot of Hajin's novel marches forward on its original course. In Paris, France, a notorious assassin guild has just delivered a terrifying countdown, warning that his life will be forfeit by the end of the month. The corrupt old man panic sweats as he clings tightly to his rocking chair, desperately searching for a way to secure powerful bodyguards to protect his massive bags of stolen money. His salvation arrives when he meets Han-hyun at a local wine tasting, learning that the enthusiastic cadet is planning a club trip to Paris, but is struggling to find affordable lodging. A wealthy crook immediately offers to host the entire club in his private mansion, a cunning scheme to use the elite cadets as free human shields. Back in his dorm, Hajin spots the club notification on his laptop and is about to ignore it when a sudden alert pops up on the screen. It is his very first mercenary request, asking him to hunt down a notorious swindler who ruined an innocent family. Checking the target's profile, our laptop-toting cadet realizes that this petty criminal is actually a disguised agent of the Chameleon Troop, the world's most dangerous syndicate of mercenaries. He immediately accepts the job, leading to an intense warehouse standoff where he blocks an incoming strike with his anti-magic coat, leaving the hidden assailant in complete shock. Deep in their hidden headquarters, the elite members of the Chameleon Troop are currently debating their next major recruit. Their mysterious leader, Boss, demands, "Since when did Chameleon Troop become a group that does analyses just to bring some newbie in?" But her subordinate argues that Hajin's lack of family or romantic ties makes him the perfect candidate. Since he has no one left in the world, they can easily buy his loyalty with boundless wealth. But Boss reminds them that their ultimate priority is finding the traitor who crossed them. When she asks which seat the new recruit would take, the silver-haired subordinate suggests assigning him the color black. The proposal immediately triggers a furious uproar, with several members shouting in protest that the position is far too valuable for an untested rookie. To settle the mounting argument, Boss calls for a silent show of hands, demanding to know who agrees to recruit Kim Hajin. A landslide of 8 votes raises high in favor, officially confirming his recruitment into the syndicate. While some members grumble in frustration, Boss projects a glowing blue hologram on the table, displaying a formal invitation to an exclusive VVIP party in Paris. Their next major heist is officially set, and as Jane catches the holographic invitation with a confident smirk, she promises that stealing a single ring is nothing for her. While our gun-toting author is preparing for the chaos ahead, his mind is focused entirely on the weapon in his hands. And as he runs a final check on his equipment under the quiet watch of a mysterious hooded figure, the rest of the class is busy buzzing with nervous anticipation, especially when their instructor steps up to announce they are drawing lots before stepping through the portal. Our laptop-toting cadet has never even been to Europe in his past life, yet here he is, seconds away from a magical commute, while hoping the lottery doesn't completely derail the original novel's timeline. But reality hits the moment they land right beneath the Eiffel Tower, surrounded by the historic monuments of Paris and the relaxed vibe of outdoor cafes. Of course, the piece is shattered immediately by Ki Naeun screaming about her terrible luck in drawing him as a partner, before she shuts him up with a swift smack to the head. But their domestic bickering is interrupted when another cadet calls them over, flaunting his gorgeous new girlfriend with a big embrace, which only makes their single classmates stand in the background looking absolutely miserable, especially when she is introduced as Natasha, the team doctor. Our wolf-like marksman isn't buying the sweet act for a second, wondering how this random doctor actually fits into the picture. But before he can dig deeper, he is dragged away by his fiery partner who wants to grab a bite to eat. As they walk, she notes how different he is from the useless extra she used to ignore, unaware that he is already leading her through the streets to a high-end restaurant, claiming he simply knows her notoriously picky taste in food. He smoothly walks in to claim a reservation for two, leaving her completely dumbfounded as to how a regular cadet secured a table at such an exclusive spot. And when he casually slides the menu over for her to order, she can only stammer in surprise, completely unaware that he is secretly counting on her wealthy background to pick the absolute best dishes. Suddenly, a familiar presence catches his eye, making him bolt from the table and sprint after a woman weaving through the crowded restaurant. He follows her out into the street, desperate for answers, and when she finally stops and turns around, he finds himself staring at Yun Seung-ah, catching his breath as he asks what the prestigious guild leader is doing all the way in Paris. But her cold, unfamiliar gaze makes him ask why she is pretending not to know him, just as a sudden system alert flashes on his laptop screen, sending a wave of absolute shock through his chest. Staring at the screen, he realizes the terrifying truth, as the woman he was just speaking to watches him from the shadows, her thoughts drifting to her past. His mind flashes back to the novel's lore, where the real Seung-ah and a woman named Jane were once close partners, sharing countless grueling missions and relying on each other to survive, only for Jane to brutally betray her at the most critical moment. Lying wounded in the flames, the guild leader had asked her why she did it, only for the villain to smile and admit she just did it because it felt like fun, revealing her true identity as Jane Valérine, the chameleon troop's yellow. Meanwhile, back in the present, Yu Yonha is pacing the streets of Paris with a heavy mind, until Hajin, currently disguised as her loyal secretary Yoren, hands her a coffee. He gently notes that she looks troubled, but she claims she actually feels refreshed to finally settle an old score, even as she admits she doesn't fully trust the anonymous tip about Jane's arrival. Yet knowing how much that thief loves high society parties, they both know she won't be able to resist Homer's ring, the mythical relic locked inside the Grand Mansion safe, CH039P017, which is exactly where the cars are heading under the cover of night. CH039P018, setting the stage for a heist that will dissolve into pure chaos. With his trusty Desert Eagle drawn and ready for action, our gun-toting author keeps his eyes locked forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with his mysterious allies, as his fingers fly across his laptop keyboard to prepare for the massive heist ahead. Few hours later, right outside the elegant restaurant of Gaot Celeste, Ki Naeun is laughing her head off at his stiff posture, prompting our extra-turned hero to suggest they split up for their own errands, since he secretly needs to scout the Grand Mansion before the VVIP ball begins at 5. She happily tells him to do whatever he wants, which only earns a dry warning for her not to get lost in the big city. As evening falls over the massive estate, wealthy guests in elegant masks begin arriving in luxury cars, stepping onto the red carpet in gorgeous gowns and tailored suits, and standing among the decorative lilies to show off their wealth, while onlookers whisper about how incredibly cool everyone looks. Inside, some ladies are already busy gossiping about their handsome dance partners, ignoring the heavy, tense atmosphere building right outside the walls, where our favorite sharpshooter is standing on a nearby rooftop. Using his trusty observation gift, he checks the timer to confirm everything is running on schedule, but a sudden glare in his vision reveals a massive, glowing orange mana portal ripping through the air. Curses his terrible luck under his breath, realizing that only a high-tier demonic human could conjure such an artificial rift, and that the intruder is likely already masquerading as a guest inside the ballroom. His laptop screen flashes with an urgent alert, confirming the arrival of the notorious Evil Society, a dangerous syndicate led by the ruthless Kim Hakbyo. Frustrated that the co-author has thrown another deadly wrench into his story, he activates his ether gear, wrapping himself in a sleek black mask and magical shroud, as he prepares to drop down and intercept the threat. Inside the mansion, a wealthy guest is silently choked unconscious, leaving him slumped on the floor as a shadowy figure slips past, making a beeline straight for the heavy steel vault. She sneers about how laughably easy the heist is, staring hungrily at the mythical-grade relic, the legendary Homer's ring resting on its velvet cushion, and snatches it up in her gloved hand. But as she tries to slip away, she bumps right into our masked marksman, mistaking him for the real Yorin in his disguise. She playfully asks her secretary why he's wandering around, before pulling him into a sudden, tight embrace. Our hero freezes in absolute shock, stuttering as he asks what the vice captain is doing, only for her to whisper a cryptic tease before delivering a brutal kick straight to his gut. The impact triggers a massive explosion that tears through the mansion, sending terrified guests screaming in every direction as smoke fills the shattered ballroom. Through the haze, the master of disguise stands revealed as the blonde-haired Jane, who draws her short sword to strike at the masked woman who just blocked her escape. Yu Yonha smoothly parries the blade, revealing she knew it was Jane all along because no imposter could ever mimic her secretary's walk. Jane merely offers a wicked, golden-eyed smile, while the masked heiress glares back with furious intensity, unleashing a massive wave of sword energy that cuts a devastating path through the elegant ballroom, leaving the wealthy onlookers to assume this is just a lover's quarrel gone horribly wrong. And if things weren't chaotic enough, a massive purple monster suddenly materializes over a masked guest who was just trying to enjoy his taco, its spiked head looming menacingly in the middle of the ballroom, bearing a terrifying, jagged grin at the petrified crowd. While a masked man with a beard can only stare down in disbelief, the magical chaos erupts into bright pink energy, as a strange figure announces they are pink, and collapses onto the floor as the residual mana finally swirls away.